Great to have you all along with us, especially after some tech challenges, which are obviously now resolved. So thanks for hanging in with us yesterday morning streaming and on our CBC Listen app. Today on the program, we will talk a lot about, of course, what's happening with the snow and what's coming. But we also are going to have a conversation about some lovely things, like what's on at the Leaf in Assiniboine Park. There's this beautiful new showcase. So Marjorie Dowhouse was there. We'll talk about that right after 6 and more. Stay tuned, though, because World Report comes first.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Nicole Byer has made a living talking to people and being funny. She's so good at it that she's got podcasts, TV shows, and she hosts the reality show Nailed It.
You guys really have your work cut out for yourselves. Jacques and I are going to go have a margarita.
She'll tell you how she juggles it all while living with ADHD, or as she says, maybe because of it.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1 and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia Young. Right now, South Africa is at The Hague accusing Israel of genocide.
The application places Israel's genocidal acts and omissions within the broader context of Israel's 75-year apartheid.
That is South African Ambassador Vusi Madonsela speaking in opening statements. The Hamas-run health ministry estimates more than 23,000 Palestinians have been killed in this conflict. But Israel insists it's trying to protect the civilians Hamas has put in harm's way. That is the sound of Israeli soldiers walking through a deep tunnel. The IDF released that video this morning. It says the tunnel runs right under a civilian part of Khan Yunis, and Hamas used it to hold Israeli hostages. Those claims have not been verified. Nala Ayed is the host of CBC Radio's Ideas. She is at the International Court of Justice and has more on the arguments before the court.
As supporters of Israel and Palestinians protested outside, lawyers for South Africa made their opening arguments inside the Peace Palace, outlining their case for the country's accusation of genocide against Israel. Ultimately, what South Africa is seeking here in these hearings is an emergency or an interim measure, what they're calling provisional measures. It's a little bit like a restraining order that would be aimed at stemming the conflict in the short term until the court has a chance to consider the bigger question, which is South Africa's accusation that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. In its submission, South Africa says the acts in question include killing Palestinians in Gaza, causing them serious bodily and mental harm, and inflicting on them conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction as a group. Israel will have its turn on Friday, and you can expect in court vehement opposition to the accusation and an expansion on Israeli statements that the military operations are necessary for its self-defense against a force, Hamas, that it has described as genocidal, and that the Israeli Defense Forces are doing whatever possible to avoid civilian casualties. If the past is any indication, the court will come back quickly, possibly within weeks with a ruling. But if the court decides on provisional measures, the court has no mechanism for enforcing its decision. And on the bigger question, that's going to take years to rule on. Nala Ayed, CBC News, The Hague.
Canada's position on this case is still ambiguous. Janice McGregor joins us now from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, what kind of stance is the government expected to take here?
Well, it was interesting, Marcia. South Africa's High Commissioner Rhys Sheikh spoke to media here in Ottawa yesterday. He said it's not his place to tell other countries like Canada what to do, but he made it clear where his country stands.
And the claim of victimization of genocide is not a right to perpetuate that against another people.
He told reporters that Canada has three options here. Support this case, as countries from the global south are doing, and that stance would be consistent, he said, with the position Canada took in a case with similar facts that Gambia brought against Myanmar. Or he acknowledged that Canada could oppose this case, as the U.S. has. But legal analysts told reporters yesterday that as a signatory to the Genocide Convention, there's a risk that if Canada were to provide material support or political cover for Israel, it could be complicit if this court eventually finds there's a risk of genocide in Gaza. Or there's a third option, similar to positions we've seen European allies like France take, which would be to uphold this legal process and commit Canada to respecting what the court decides. In a letter, NDP critic Heather McPherson told Foreign Minister Melanie Joly that if Canada isn't prepared to support South Africa's case, it should, at the very least, do that and not oppose it.
But so far, Canada has not chosen any of those three options. What's going on?
Conservative Deputy Leader Melissa Lantsman this week took to her social media to accuse Joly of taking no position so that backbenchers in the Liberal caucus can play both sides. And indeed, we've seen in public statements MPs like Anthony Housefather, Marco Mendicino call the court application baseless and unconscionable. While MPs like Salma Zahid have said accusations that Israel's denying the necessities of life in Gaza deserve to be heard in a legal forum. If Liberals are looking to diaspora groups in this country for direction, there is no consensus there. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office released pictures of him meeting with the Jewish community in Toronto yesterday, but despite staff telling CBC News there'd be some kind of declaration clarifying where Canada stands yesterday, in the end, nothing came.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Closing arguments in Donald Trump's civil fraud case will be heard today, but the former U.S. president will not be taking a break from the campaign trail to be in the Manhattan courtroom. Just his lawyers will be there. Paul Hunter reports.
The judge has already ruled Trump did commit business fraud and that he, his sons Eric and Donald Jr., along with others, did so for years. The issue now is the penalty Trump will pay for that. And New York's Attorney General wants it to be enormous, seeking a fine of $370 million U.S. and that he never again be allowed to do real estate business in New York. In court today, for closing arguments on that from both sides, Trump is expected to be at the table with his lawyers. Trump had been given permission to speak for himself at the hearing, but only on the condition he stick to courtroom procedures and speak only about the case itself. When Trump failed to agree on that, the judge took away permission for Trump to be part of the closing arguments. It'll be that same judge who will decide on the penalty. His decision is expected to come likely by the end of the month. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Donald Trump also didn't make an appearance in Des Moines, Iowa last night. That is where the latest GOP debate took place less than a week before the state's caucuses next Monday. And it was the smallest Republican debate yet, with just two candidates on stage. Freelance reporter Steve Futterman was there.
For 2 hours, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis went back and forth, often attacking the other.
When you need someone standing and fight for you, don't look for Nikki Haley. You won't be able to find her if you had a search warrant.
You can go to DeSantisLies.com and look at all of those. There's at least 24 lies that he's told about me.
The prize in this debate, a chance to emerge as the main rival to Donald Trump. Trump declined to take part, but his name did come up at various points, and Haley and DeSantis both offered criticism.
Let's just be honest. He said he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. He did not deliver that. He said he was going to drain the swamp. He did not deliver that.
His way is not my way. I don't have vengeance. I don't have vendettas. I don't take things personally.
There were harsh disagreements, especially on Ukraine. Haley insisting the U.S. must continue to give military aid. According to the polls, Trump continues to maintain a huge lead here in Iowa, and nothing that took place last night would seem likely to change that. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Des Moines.
A CBC Toronto investigation has uncovered Amazon has sold weapons that are illegal in Canada. That includes switchblades and stun guns. Whistleblowers flagged to our reporters that those weapons and more have been available for purchase on Amazon's Canadian site. And as Angelina King reports, some of those items have made it across the border.
A knife's blade pops in and out at the flick of a switch. Advertised on Amazon.ca as a camping knife, but it's actually a switchblade. Toronto defense lawyer Daniel Goldblum saw the video of the knife.
If it's a knife where you press a button and a blade springs out of the handle, that's a prohibited weapon.
The buyer who posted the video wrote a 5-star review saying, "Somehow this very illegal knife made it to my house and I could not be happier." A shopper and former Amazon employee told us illegal items were on the website. CBC News found brass knuckles and stun guns for sale. We aren't identifying the ex-worker for fear of repercussions to their future employment.
I was absolutely shocked that Amazon would allow anything like this to be listed on their Canadian website.
They noticed a stun gun for sale on the site in October. They alerted management and it was taken down, but say it was back online days later. The Canada Border Services Agency is responsible for stopping illegal items at the border. Aaron McCrory with CBSA says he's not surprised prohibited weapons are being sold on Amazon.
The ability to conceal small items in that volume of shipments that are coming into Canada is a significant challenge.
Amazon said it uses technology to prevent illegal items from being sold. If Amazon discovers a seller evades it, the items are removed and the seller is banned, which happened in the case of the knife. The other items CBC News discovered have also been taken down. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can read more about what CBC Toronto Investigates discovered. That is on our main page at cbcnews.ca. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, same place, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, the storm is in Manitoba now. We knew it was coming from Alberta. Get ready, Manitoba. Hang on tight and get the boots. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio live in Winnipeg. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM or on the app. To seriousness here, the perimeter is closed, visibility is lousy, more snow is coming, and in a moment we'll run down the long list of school closures this morning that we already have. So 6:10 AM the time. In addition, this hour on the morning show, we're going to take you somewhere to get your mind off all of this challenge, to the Leaf in Assiniboine Park. They're kicking off the new year in style. They have a new showcase. It looks beautiful. I love flowers, and if you do too, you want to hear all about it. In addition, this hour on the program to that story, NASA is pushing back its planned astronaut moon missions by a year. Why did the space agency decide to hold off on liftoff? We'll find out. Stay with us. So first headlines, then I'll do the school closures, and we'll get into what's happening out there in terms of the actual forecast and the traffic situation. Heather Wells, obviously weather's going to be in your news as well. What's up?
Yeah, good morning. We do have snowplows. You'll see them on and hear them throughout the city of Winnipeg this morning. So it's not too bad as you try to navigate the city. But as you mentioned, out of the city, a different story. The Perimeter Highway is closed, and Highway 16, the Yellowhead, closed from Neepwa to Highway 50. That's about the Gladstone area. So we'll bring you the latest on that. And a First Nations woman from Manitoba who spent more than 30 years with the RCMP is cautiously optimistic about the force's race-based data collection project. The pilot project aims to help the force better understand experiences of people from racialized communities. We'll hear from Marge Hudson from Barons River. She spent more than 30 years as an RCMP officer. We'll hear what she thinks and what she faced while she was in uniform. Those stories coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, the school closures now, divisions that have already reached out to CBC to say the weather is going to force closure today. Lord Selkirk School Division closed, staff not to report. Hanover Division is closed, schools, but staff are to work from home. Borderland is closed. Seine River is closed. Red River Valley Division is closed, but staff to work from home. Prairie Rose is closed, and Evergreen School Division has also closed schools and obviously canceled buses. So all of those divisions shut down. We will share that list throughout the hour, especially in the early hours when those calls are coming in. You can also check it out online, remember, on all of our social media pages or at cbc.ca/Manitoba, and check us out on YouTube. Speaking of which, if you've got pictures already, if you're one of those people that's out and about, we'd love to see those just to sort of see how much snow has already fallen around the province. You can email us at radio893@cbc.ca. Right now, let's have an actual look at the forecast with Abby Adiyemi. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. We've got weather statement. We've got cold warnings for Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, Pukatawagan, and it's all about a period of very cold chills expected. And we hear that the coldest chills will feel like minus 50 to minus 45. But right now in Winnipeg, we are currently at minus 15 degrees, and we are experiencing periods of snow. We should be expecting these periods of snow with blowing snow in outlying areas, and a total accumulation of 2 to 4 centimeters is anticipated. The wind from the northwest is blowing at 40, gusting to 60, and as the day progresses, temperature is going to be falling to minus 19 this afternoon, so be mindful of the wind chill, which will make it feel like minus 25 this morning. But Winnipeg is currently at minus 15 degrees, and from our friends at Environment Canada, they are reporting that so far Winnipeg and the Red River Valley has seen about 8 to 12 centimeters of snow, and a total of around 15 centimeters by the time the system moves off. And Brandon has received about 8 to 10 centimeters so far. Riding Mountain and has seen about 15 to 20 centimeters so far. And they're also advising that the strong wind is developing in the western side of the province this morning. So it's going to be blowing and reducing visibility on the highways.
So Winnipeg, Red River Valley, 8 to 12 already. And Red River Valley, did you say Riding Mountain 15? They're already up around 15 already.
Yes. They've seen 15 to 20 so far.
So this is tracking maybe to dump more snow, unless it's going to move by us quicker. We'll have to watch, because those are near the total amounts, and we're just at the start of Thursday. So, All right, Abby, thank you.
You're welcome.
So that's your snowfall amounts, your warnings. Let's get into the drive here. Corey, I guess the headline's the perimeter.
Yes, perimeter is closed. It was closed yesterday night, and as of now, we don't know exactly when they plan to open. I'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the show this morning. As well, Highway 16 from Highway 50 to Neepawa is also closed right now, so do look out for that. Already got a call on the commuter line. If this doesn't set the tone for the commute, I don't know what does. Christina said that there's a snowplow up on the median at Inkster and McPhillips, and it's blocking the median lane on westbound Inkster. Said the driver's in there, the tires are spinning, can't get anywhere. So if that gives you an idea of what kind of commute we're in for, I don't know what does. Give me a call if you see anything else going on. If you're walking, biking, driving, we're in for a very slow commute, I think it's fair to say. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, on a morning when this light snowy stuff is blowing around, your visibility's poor, the snow's coming up over your ankles, or maybe you're out brushing off the car already, who doesn't want a little bit of a glimpse of something more beautiful and more summery? There's this new display that is hitting the biomes at the Leaf in Assiniboine Park that is gorgeous. The showcase is called Fleur de Ville Voyage. Last night, designers like Carmen Gray were busy dressing mannequins in ornate garments made entirely out of flowers and plants. She spoke to CBC about the inspiration behind her mannequin.
So I'm working on this project with Mamie Griffith, who's a designer as well. The inspiration behind our mannequin is the creation story, the Indigenous creation story about Sky Woman. So Sky Woman falls and lands in what we call on planet Earth, but animals have placed her at the back of a turtle. That's a very short form of the story, but we're trying to recreate her and using plant material from the white shell. So we have birch, we have cedar, we have some poplar branches, dogwoods, and then the color palette of just kind of like the white shell area. Mamie and I are both Indigenous, and as we were asked to do the Indigenous mannequin for Fleur de Ville, so we picked something that kind of spoke to both of us. Maybe had the idea of using plants from the white shell, and I thought because it's a woman mannequin that it would be nice to have her to create Sky Woman. My favorite element that we have used is sweetgrass for the hair. So sweetgrass is one of the 4 sacred plants in our culture, and we've used it to make her hair, which is on the mannequin, and it's really pretty and it smells very nice. Another element that I'm really excited about is her cedar skirt, which is another one of our sacred plants. And there's a lot of medicinal plants on our mannequin too. I know that Manitoba has a large Indigenous population. I want them to see their province represented and maybe some of their own heritage represented. So I think to see themselves in something like this is really important, and material that they're familiar with as well, like the birch and the sage and the cedar.
So each of the mannequins has a different sort of story behind it, and it takes you to a different place. There's sort of a theme around travel. And so that means you get to see different varieties of plants and flowers. That was Carmen Gray, one of the many designers at Fleur de Ville at the Leaf. CBC's Marjorie Dalhouse was down there at the Leaf yesterday during the assembly of this. She spoke with Tina Barkley, the co-founder of the exhibit Fleur de Ville.
Flowers mark every major milestone in our lives, from birth to death. We celebrate with flowers. And I think everybody has a connection to flowers, whether it's your grandmother's garden or something you planted as a child. I think flowers just make everyone happy. There's a real connection to flowers and nature. And we thought there's nothing in the world, even something like the Chelsea Flower Show, is not all about flowers. We took the best of all those flower type things and we tried to create something, and we have created something that's become a bit of a worldwide phenomenon. We're based in Vancouver, but we take our shows all over the world, and really what we do is we bring flowers to the people. We spread joy through flowers, and what we try to do is celebrate local floral talents. So what's really special about the show is that each installation is designed by a local floral artist. So
tell us a little bit more about how you work with the florists to come up with what we're seeing here tonight.
It's an incredible process and planning process, because a lot of florists, bouquets, weddings, it's a one-day thing or a couple of day thing if it's a bouquet. So there's a lot of mechanics involved. So there's the theme, which is voyage. So each mannequin takes you on a trip or to a different destination, and it's about telling a story about that destination, not just pretty flowers. So people will learn something, but how do they design something that will both wow, like you say, what are the details? What can we bring to life using only botanical materials? And then how do we make that survive? And of course, the flowers are changed over. We have lots of refreshing that goes on. So you don't have to all rush here on day one. You can come to the Leaf on day 1, day 3, day 10. It's on until the 21st of January. And we're constantly keeping on top of that.
How do you make them survive? And it sounds like the florists have to change them out.
They do, but it's also what's under the dress. We say, what's under the dress? And there's a lot of mechanics and things that are going on underneath. There has to be a water source for fresh flowers. If people use a prop, like you'll see on the Moroccan mannequin, she's used some lanterns because it's so much a part of the Casbah type look. But I said, you can use that, but it's got to be covered in botanicals. Well, it's an intricate lacy type ironwork. She sprayed it and then it has dipped it in paprika, and one is dipped in curry, like a spice market. So very creative ideas. So you'll see mostly flowers, but there's also other interesting bits, like from beans to lentils to puffed lotus. It's very cool.
You finally brought it here to Winnipeg. Yes. People are so excited for this. What made you decide that it should come here to Winnipeg?
That is an easy answer. It's this facility. The Assiniboine Park Conservancy is such an incredible venue. I feel so lucky that this is here in Canada. We are totally honored to be here and to have this be our home here in Winnipeg. So we've always wanted to take it to different cities in Canada, but this was a slam dunk. I mean, it is absolutely at home here amongst all the other plants in the biome.
So that's a CBC's Marjorie Dalhouse in conversation with Tina Barkley, co-founder of Fleur de Ville. The installation opens today officially at 9 a.m. at the Leaf. It's in the biomes at the Leaf in Assiniboine Park. And that last night, that conversation was live on CBC News. So the video of it is online if you check out cbc.ca/Manitoba. And believe me, you want to have a sneak peek at this. It will entice you to go. You can catch the decked out mannequins, all the beautiful installations. It runs until Sunday, January 21st.
Need some laundry detergent? If you're in China, just stop off at the local Wu-Mart. Feeling chilly? Wrap yourself up in a South Butt hoodie. And how did a copycat become the best-selling cookie in the world? Copycat Brands on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
6:22 a.m. and serious weather in Manitoba this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC. The perimeter is entirely closed. Highway 16 from Highway 15 to Nipawa is closed. pardon me. Corey, can you come in and help me out with this? I apologize. So Corey was just correcting something in my ear. I just want to make sure I get this correct. So around the Nipoa area, we have a closure zone.
Right. From Highway 50 to Nipoa right now, Highway 16 is closed right now, and the entirety of the perimeter. We don't know exactly when either of those highways are expected to be open next.
So Highway 50?
Sorry, Highway 16 from Highway 50, which is just outside of Woodside,
to
Nipoa right now.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem.
You also got a call about Inkster and McPhillips in the city.
Yes, there is a snowplow up on the median at Inkster and McPhillips, blocking the westbound median lane on Inkster, and the driver was just up there spinning his wheels. So yeah,
as you were saying earlier, it exemplifies what's going on out there.
Yes, exactly. So I'll have more updates for you shortly. We're getting calls. So,
thank you for popping in.
No problem. Anytime.
I knew I wrote it down incorrectly. 788-3093. So that is the traffic line if you want to reach Corey. As he said, he's getting calls. We have 7 school divisions that are closed this morning. Lord Selkirk, Hanover, those staff to work from home there. Borderlands, Seine River, Red River Valley, those staff to work from home there as well. Prairie Rose and Evergreen, all closed this morning. So that list will be posted up shortly at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Just take it easy out there. Visibility is terrible. The snow is light. It's not the heavy stuff, but it's just, there's lots of it. It's coming fast, and it's going to continue to come as the system moves through today. Well, next on the show, it has been more than 50 years since humans last walked on the moon, but now astronauts are going to have to be even more patient about making their next lunar voyage. This week, NASA pushed back 2 upcoming missions to the moon. It includes the first Canadian astronaut, Jeremy Hansen, scheduled to travel around the moon, and Ivan Semenyak's written about the story as the science reporter for the Globe and Mail. Good morning.
Good morning.
So maybe a bit of disappointment, but what is NASA saying about the need for this delay in its Artemis moon missions?
Well, they've got a number of technical challenges that the program is facing. And, just a reminder, the Artemis is sort of the overarching program to bring, humans back to the moon and to make the moon kind of more of a regular part of space activity around the Earth. We've seen one successful flight already. This was the uncrewed Artemis 1 flight that happened in December of 2022. And actually, there's some interesting details from that flight that emerged this week that have contributed to the delays. So, for example, when Artemis 2, when the space capsule, although it was unoccupied, when that capsule returned to Earth as part of that test, engineers later discovered that some of the heat shield material from the capsule had separated during reentry. Now, NASA officials say they expect that material to be charred and burned, by the fierce heat of reentry, but they weren't expecting it to detach. It didn't damage the capsule, would not have affected people inside, but the fact that it behaved in an unexpected way meant that more time has been spent to try to fully understand the situation with the heat shield. So that's an ongoing issue. Another problem that emerged is with the design of a circuit that's part of the life support system for Artemis 3. That'll be the first mission to land on the moon, and that's got them re-looking at those components, both for Artemis 2 and 3. I think also in the background, though, there are bigger issues, and maybe one of the biggest is, there are private partners that are also part of this venture, including SpaceX, which is building the lunar lander. And, there have been 2 unsuccessful tests of that spacecraft, with a third coming up in the next month or so. So, there are potential issues there. And also with the spacesuits being provided by another company. So all of those pieces in parallel, a lot of moving parts that have to work. And, those are all contributing to the delays.
You alluded to some of this, but several countries and private companies, as what you were alluding to, do have lunar aspirations. But when you look at countries, India, China, Japan, just a few, what does NASA's delay mean for the, so to speak, race to the moon?
I think, a lot of these efforts by different countries and companies are, in parallel and adjacent to what Artemis is doing. And I don't think will affect Artemis very much. But there's one exception, which is that China, which has quite a separate program, and by U.S. law, the U.S. and China don't collaborate on space. So China has a plan to put astronauts on the moon before 2030. They've got their own aggressive program underway for that. I think if China lands astronauts before Artemis, that will be a PR coup for China, and that was acknowledged this week by the NASA administrator, Bill Nelson. But he also said he didn't think China would get there before Artemis, but there is that sort of timeline looming. Apart from that, I would say most of these other efforts by companies and other partners are all happening adjacent to Artemis and just part of that larger wave of making the moon more accessible, although it's still very challenging.
Obviously, we may not be able to answer this morning, but do we know how long the delay might be?
Well, the delay for Artemis 2 will be 10 months. So, the previous schedule had a launch later this year, November of 2024. Now Artemis 2 is set for September of 2025, with Artemis 3 to follow a year later. And then subsequent flights have so far not been affected by that schedule change. We'll see, though. It's still a very ambitious schedule. There could be other problems. Many aspects of this program are being done for the first time. So I have to say, it wouldn't surprise me if things slip even a little bit more. But I'm sure that a lot of calculations went into choosing the dates that were announced this week.
Thank you very much for your analysis, Ivan. Really appreciate having you on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's Ivan Semeniuk. He's a science reporter for the Globe and Mail. We're coming up to 6:30 in news time here in Manitoba on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the CBC Listen app this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show, keeping you up to date on this storm system, the Clipper that's moving through, very active weather, poor visibility, and huge challenges if you are attempting travel today. Corey's in with yet another update.
Yeah, I got another call from Christina, who told us about that snow plow earlier up on the median on Inkster and McPhillips, blocking the westbound median lane on Inkster. She also said there's a jackknife semi up on eastbound, blocking eastbound Centerport, the entirety of eastbound Centerport. So you can kind of get around by taking the yield to Sturgeon, but you can assume it's going to be very slow going if you're heading eastbound on Centerport because of that jackknife semi. Westbound also very icy and snowy as well. Also a highway update from David. He says from 217 coming in from Hazelwood, very slow and snowy, as you can imagine. He did say Highway 15 from Dougal to Winnipeg is actually pretty well plowed and pretty clear right now, though, so that's okay. Also, one listener says, hey, I know the perimeter is closed, but I just ended up driving on it because it's obviously they don't actually put barricades down to close it, but he says don't go on it, even though you physically can actually go on because it's not in good condition at all. So just a reminder that even though it's closed, you can physically go onto the perimeter, but you should not because it's not in good condition at all right now. So that was just a reminder from one listener who ended up accidentally on the perimeter. So if you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on that CBC commuter line, and I will let folks know what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Corey. We do have 2 additional closures to announce when it comes to schools. We'll get to those right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. A stormy, wintry morning across the province. In Winnipeg today, we're under a special weather statement. Periods of snow, 2 to 4 centimeters expected. Temperature falling to minus 19. It is windy as well. Well, you realize when you step into it just how much snow has fallen. Winnipeg and southern Manitoba under that special weather statement as that Alberta Clipper piles more snow on what we already have. When all is said and done, about 15 centimeters will be on the ground. In western Manitoba, the snowfall warning still stands. Up to 20 centimeters will have dropped by the time the system moves off later this afternoon. And it's not just snow, but cold. Parts of the north under an extreme cold warning. When you factor in the wind chill values around Lynn Lake and Leaf Rapids, as well as Puckatawagan and Brochet, will be minus 45 to minus 50 this morning. As Marcy and Corey have been mentioning, snowplows are out this morning in the city of Winnipeg. And while you can drive the streets with relative ease, sidewalks are a different story, as are highways. Highway 16, the Yellowhead, is closed between Neepawa and Highway 50. That's around Gladstone. And the perimeter highway around Winnipeg is closed. Do not drive on it. It is closed. Once again, snow clearing crews are hard at work in the city and out on highways. A First Nations woman from Manitoba who spent more than 30 years with the RCMP is cautiously optimistic about its race-based data collection project. That project, it's a pilot project. It aims to help the force better understand the experiences of people from racialized communities. Marge Hudson is from Barons River First Nation. While she was in the RCMP, she says she faced racism and harassment.
This may help, but they're going to have to go through some special training and have Native people in the academy teaching them.
The project launched this week in select communities across Canada, including Thompson. The Mounties say the data will be collected for 1 year before it's analyzed and the findings are publicly reported. Manitoba's police watchdog has handed off its investigation into the death of a Nigerian international student at the hands of Winnipeg police. The Independent Investigation Unit has referred the case to its counterpart in Alberta after learning an officer involved in the shooting is a close relative of someone at Manitoba Justice. Alain Babineau is a retired RCMP officer who works for the anti-racism lobby group Red Coalition. He hopes the final report from Alberta will provide some answers.
The first stage of justice is getting a fair and transparent investigation. And I think the release of the final report, regardless of whether charges are made or not, would also provide added solace, if you will, or at least added justice to the process.
19-year-old Afolabi Apaso was shot and killed on New Year's Eve after police were called for a well-being check. A Winnipeg emergency room doctor has joined others calling for more beds and more staff in this city's hospitals. Doug Ailefson is a former Liberal politician who also works in the ER at Grace Hospital. He recently posted his frustration with overcrowding in ERs online.
It's an absolute catastrophe and has been for quite some time. We're all nervous that, there'll be a bad outcome in the waiting room, that someone, comes in and because they waited so long, something bad happens to them. We're doing everything we can to prevent it, but we're all terrified that that will happen on our watch.
The NDP government has announced plans to open 36 new acute care beds at St. Boniface Hospital, all staffed and operational within a year. The head of the William White Neighbourhood Association applauds a plan by city firefighters to do more inspections on multifamily units. That's where most fire injuries and deaths occur. Daryl Warren watched a rooming house in his neighbourhood burn down last month. He says the city should also step up education for landlords and their tenants.
They're cooking or whatever, set the alarms off all the time, and they get annoyed by that. So they're putting, plastic bags and stuff over these smoke detectors, which they shouldn't be doing.
Warren also wants the city to crack down on landlords who don't make their properties safe. For the last decade, the city's devoted a significant amount of resources to inspecting industrial buildings, even though data shows multifamily buildings are 4 times more likely to burn. Firefighters in Winnipeg will soon have a new member with a nose for arson. A specially trained dog, a Labrador Retriever, is being prepped for the assignment in Virginia. Jason Federow is Winnipeg's Chief Officer of Fire Investigations, and he says the city has seen a spike in suspicious fires.
The dog will be able to help our investigators by assisting them in finding areas where they'll be able to collect samples of where possible ignitable liquids were used to accelerate the fire, and we can take those samples, send them off to our lab, and have a forensic chemist be able to analyze that.
Federow says the city has a deal with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The Bureau will train the dog and a Winnipeg firefighter who will become its designated handler, and they may get called to help with some arson investigations in the northern U.S. You can find more news updated throughout the day, as well as all those school closures. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, speaking of which, we'll do the forecast and we'll talk highway closures and conditions momentarily. First, here's your full list of school closures. There are 9 of them so far. Lord Selkirk School Division staff to not report, all closed there. Hanover staff to work from home but otherwise closed. All closed Borderland, Seine River, as well as Prairie Rose School Division. Red River Valley School Division closed but staff to work from home. Evergreen School Division's closed. Cancelled buses, obviously. Schools are open in Beautiful Plains School Division, but buses aren't running there. So that's Beautiful Plains, no buses, schools on. And in Gretna, all classes from grade 9 to 12 are closed because of the storm. So that's in Gretna. So that's the full list to this hour. Let's get into our forecast now. The watches, the warnings, the details from Abby Adeyemi.
Good morning once again. Yes, let's start with a snowfall warning for Manitoba lakes. We hear that the snow is going to be heavy at times, and it's expected to continue through today all the way till midday, and it's going to be affecting the Riding Mountain area. So far, Winnipeg and the Red River Valley is seeing about 8 to 12 centimeters. Brandon has received about 8 to 10 centimeters so far. And just as mentioned, Riding Mountain there has seen about 15 centimeters. But currently in Winnipeg, we are at minus 15 degrees. Today is going to be having that period of snow that we've been experiencing since last night. We should see between 2 to 5 centimeters more today. And the wind from the south is becoming light this afternoon. We're heading to a high of minus 9. Brandon is currently at minus 21. Current conditions there, we're having light snow there. Melita and Verdun is at minus 22. We're going to be seeing periods of snow ending near noon, and then a mix of sun and cloud, and you'll be falling to minus 23. Heading to the northern part of the province, Thompson is currently at minus 33. Current conditions there, partly cloudy, and it's going to be mainly cloudy with 30% chance of light snow, and you'll be seeing a high of minus 24. Good morning, Churchill. How are you doing today? You're currently having ice crystals, and you are at minus 20. It's going to be mainly cloudy there, 60% chance of light snow this morning, a high of minus 18 with a risk of frostbite. And of course, Gimli is currently at minus 17. You're looking at a high of minus 19, and your temperature is going to be falling to minus 19 rather. And for the Parkland region, Dauphin is currently at minus 23. We have that snowfall warning there, and you'll be having that about 2 centimeters plus. You head into a high of minus 21. Currently, Winnipeg is at minus 15.
Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
So while you were talking, Heather Wells popped in. Rolling River School Division is also now on this list of affected schools and divisions. Buses are canceled there today, and colony schools are closed today in Rolling River School Division. Corey Funk with the commute now.
Well, the biggest issue out there is that the perimeter is now closed, according to the province. So that's the entirety of the perimeter closed right now due to these poor conditions as well. Highway 16 from Highway 50, just around Woodside there, up until Neepawa at Highway 5 is also closed right now. So those are the two highways that are currently closed in the province. So look out for that. Here in the city, getting calls of a few issues caused by this weather. First one, for example, a snowplow up on the median at Inkster and McPhillips may still be there. Is blocking the median lane on westbound Inkster, heard from Christina. Probably about half an hour ago, there was a driver in there just spinning its wheels. So hopefully it's gotten out of there, but if it's still there, just a heads up for that. Jackknife Semi also heard westbound on Centerport. Blocking the eastbound Centerport right there, and westbound it's icy and snowy. So you, Christina said that you can get around eastbound Centerport, around that Jackknife Semi, by going around the Sturgeon Yield, but it's still going to be very backed up. Also heard from David coming in from Hazelwood, Highway 217, pretty slow and snowy right now, but Highway 15 from Dougal to Winnipeg is actually fairly clear, not too bad in terms of visibility. You got to go slow, but still feels pretty safe. So that's the updates I've been getting so far, but if you see anything else going out there, tell me what you're seeing anywhere in the province on the highways here in Winnipeg. Let me know. I will let your fellow listeners know. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
And just a small reminder here, because this is a new thing in our province, that if you are on a roadway that's closed, like the perimeter or one of those highways, like the portion of 16, you can face a fine. So there's new prohibition. We haven't had that in this province. It's fairly new in the last year here. So the fines could be like up to $300, around $300 if you're found driving. But you also, if you're in a heavy vehicle, could face a fine that's more like $670. Here's Heather Wells again with another addition to our school closure list. Thank you, Heather. So Western School Division now also saying classes and buses canceled. Staff to report when safe. Garden Valley School Division, all schools are closed there. So this list continues to grow. And as soon as you, if you're not up yet and you're listening with your earbuds at home, as soon as you look out your window in Manitoba, especially in Westman, you're going to know why everyone's having a snow day. So let's get into what's happening in business news and switch gears at 6:41 a.m. on CBC. Good morning, Crystalie Ramlakan.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So let's talk financial regulators in the States. They've approved Bitcoin exchange-traded funds. What are the implications for that decision?
Well, it's being seen as a landmark moment for cryptocurrency, but even though the Securities and Exchange Commission approved the listing and trading of certain Bitcoin shares, it says it doesn't endorse Bitcoin and says investors should still be cautious about the risks associated with products whose value is tied to crypto. Now, exchange-traded funds pool assets like gold, stock bonds, and now Bitcoin to provide an easy way to invest in something without having to buy the asset itself. Now, earlier this week, the SEC's account on X, formerly known as Twitter, announced the approval, but it was quickly repealed after the group said its account was compromised. And that brief controversy overshadowed the actual approval, which opens up Bitcoin to a vast new pool of potential investors. But, Marcy, many countries, including here in Canada, have actually allowed Bitcoin ETFs for years. So for more on this, here's Mark Connors, who is with 3IQ, a crypto investing firm in New York City.
40% of the world's financial markets are now allowed to participate in a regulated, portfolio-appropriate asset. It's meaningful. It means that there's more upside. So the Canadians who did get in when the regulated product was allowed 3 years ago, because now the pool of participants has expanded materially.
Now, Bitcoin is the first and best known cryptocurrency. It's built and traded on a decentralized ledger system known as a blockchain. And some say it's a breakthrough in how we use money, while critics have compared it to a Ponzi scheme. But now Americans can use their traditional investment accounts to buy and sell Bitcoin. Before, they had to use a crypto exchange, some of which have turned out to be scams like FTX.
Let's switch gears to something that a lot of listeners can maybe relate to. I had a big conversation with a friend over the holidays about this. How's it looking for people who want to buy a new car this year?
Yeah, well, it's looking like a little more optimistic environment out there. Following solid and resilient earnings over the past few years, profit in the automotive industry is expected to slightly moderate this year. That's according to a new report from Morningstar DBRS. Now, it says production disruptions have been substantially resolved, and demand, pricing, and product mix should revert to more normal levels as demand-supply imbalance progressively diminishes. So for more on this, here's Robert Strada, who is with Morningstar DBRS.
From a consumer perspective, there's going to be some relief in pricing, some wider selection of available models. Pricing is still going to be higher, while higher certainly is relative to historical norms, but there should be some moderation in pricing year over year, just given the improved supply.
Now, new union contracts for auto workers could result in higher labor costs across much of the sector, representing a further headwind to industry earnings. However, though, delayed EV ambitions could help support the industry with a possible slower ramp up of less profitable EV sales.
For your last story, you're looking at what companies are looking for this year when it comes to hiring people.
Yeah, well, not surprising here, skills in artificial intelligence are in demand. So Canada's tech community says finding staff who can develop AI-based products or use them to make things more efficient is a priority with the global race to take advantage of AI. Now, companies, startups, universities, and law firms have all been soliciting applications for people with AI skills. For example, recently, Porter Airlines was looking for an AI engineer to, quote, solve a wide range of complex problems. Pharmaceuticals giant Johnson & Johnson wanted a senior data scientist to stay on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence. And even Yelp wanted a senior machine learning engineer in Canada capable of turning raw data into valuable signals. Now, many of the jobs focus on generative AI. That's a type of machine learning capable of generating text, images, and other content. We've seen that kind of thing out there. But, Marcy, many believe AI's impact on hiring is still a long way from its peak. Employment website Indeed found generative AI was mentioned in just 0.7% of Canadian job postings at the end of November, but 17% of postings for machine learning engineers and 5% of data scientist jobs mentioned generative AI.
Markets today?
In Europe, markets are higher ahead of U.S. inflation data. Germany is up, the U.K. is down, France is up. In Asia, Japan led the advance in Asian markets, and South Korea stocks clung onto gains after the Bank of Korea held interest rates there. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all up. Oil is up $1.43 to $72.80 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up $9.70 to $2,037.50 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.14 of a cent to 74.87 cents U.S.
All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow, Crystal Lee. Take care.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Chrisley Ramlacan with our business news. 6:47 a.m., lots of school divisions closed, perimeter closed. We feel like we're living in a snow globe when you look outside the studio window here. And by the end of this system moving through Manitoba weather-wise, we're going to need a lot of good people to help us shovel on out. Here's the tune of the same name by local supergroup Indian City. Need good people to shovel us out. And while we were talking here, Heather Wells, or listening to the music rather, added one to the list. Sunrise School Division schools are also closed, by the way. And that list, I haven't had a chance to check, should be on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. And so you can update there. You can also email your storm pictures to radio893@cbc.ca. In Winnipeg, currently we're expecting snow to continue. Poor visibility and the perimeters closed this morning. Next on the show, South Africa told judges at the World Court in The Hague today that Israel's committing genocide in Gaza and pleaded with the court to issue an interim order for an immediate halt to Israel's military actions. We will hear more about that analysis with Nella Ayed, actually. That's coming up at 7 o'clock. But for people caught up in the war in Gaza, those living within the territory, there are very few avenues of escape. And starting this week, Canada has started a program that offers temporary immigration status to people there, those who have family in Canada. But pulling together the necessary documents while in a war zone is just one of the challenges people are going to face. To talk about that aspect of this, Mike Malloy is with us, adjunct research professor at Carleton University, a career foreign service officer, and a former ambassador to Jordan. Good morning.
Good morning.
So can we recap what we know about this immigration program and the requirements?
Yeah, The government announced that they are going to give 1,000 temporary residence visas, good for 3 years, to stay in Canada for 3 years, for the relatives of people who are stuck in Gaza. So that means if you're a Palestinian Canadian citizen or Palestinian permanent resident of Canada, you can now apply to bring to Canada your husband or wife, your kids, grandkids, parents, grandparents, your brothers or sisters, and their families to Canada under this new program. There's a little gap in the program. We know that a number of relatives of Canadians have been killed, and there may be nieces and nephews out there who've been orphaned, and so we're hoping that the government will include them as well. But it's basically it's a family unification program, and it will get the closest relatives of Canadians out of there, we hope, and into Canada.
What do you think of the number, 1,000 people? I mean, what comes next in terms of selection?
It's a good start, but and I was glad to hear Minister Miller say the day before yesterday that the 1,000 cap is flexible. Ministers have the ability to raise it if there's more. Like if we get 1,000 people and it's clear that there are hundreds or even a couple of thousand more in the queue, I can't see the government stopping it. There'd just be too much pressure.
And what do you think of the timing of this? Why do you think the government's gone in this direction now?
Well, I think it's clear. Now more than 8 weeks into this horrible series of events, it's very clear that that a lot of people are now permanently homeless. And people are in danger. There's fear of epidemics and starvation and various other things. And one of the very few things that we as a country can do is just to get the people who our own citizens care about most, and that is their family. So I think it's been motivated by a recognition that it's a sensible and compassionate thing to do is to provide a path that gets these people out of whatever situation they're in and into places where their relatives can look after them.
Looking ahead now, looking forward, what do you expect in terms of refugee flows out of Gaza in the next many months here?
Well, I think we're going to see. I don't think we're going to see a flood. I think we're going to see a steady trickle. It'll take a little while for the program to really kick in and begin to work efficiently. The Palestinian community in this country is not enormous. It's less than 100,000. So there's and not everybody is from Gaza for sure. So I don't think the numbers are going to be big. I think I just hope that people understand that extracting people from that particular situation is complicated. We don't control who leaves Gaza. That's in the hands of the Egyptian authorities at the gate, or the Israeli authorities, depending on which way people are able to get out. So we have to. But what we have to be prepared to do is, when people get out, move them very quickly to Canada. And I just hope that there's enough flexibility in the program that they can do that.
Thank you very much for the analysis today, Mike Malloy. Appreciate having you on for a few minutes here.
Thanks a lot.
More analysis coming up. You as well. Take care. More analysis coming up on World Report. Mike Malloy with us this morning, adjunct research professor at Carleton University, a career foreign service officer, and a former ambassador to Jordan, with his perspective today. As I mentioned, so on World Report, we're going to hear more about what is happening today. South Africa is at the World Court in The Hague, saying that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. It's pleading with the court to issue an interim order for an immediate halt to Israel's military actions. And so Nella Ayed is reporting on this, and that's coming up at 7 o'clock. Right now, it is 3 minutes to. Heather's here with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, you might get a booter of snow. 8 to 10 centimeters are on the ground in Winnipeg already, and we are expecting up to 4 more by the time the system moves out. And it is making things messy. Snowplows are out in Winnipeg, but highways, we have snowplows, but there are some closures. The perimeter around Winnipeg is closed this morning. So is Highway 16 between Neepawa and Highway 50. That's about the Gladstone area. Hospital beds are not enough. That is what an ER doctor in Winnipeg says after the NDP government announced the addition of 36 acute care beds to St. Boniface Hospital. Doug Ailefson hopes the province, he says, is up to the challenge of staffing those beds. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Snow and blowing snow more coming, probably 15 or more for the Red River Valley, looking at what's already fallen. As Abby mentioned, 8 to 12 already down in Winnipeg. Centimeters of snow, that is. In the Rocky Mountain National Park in that area, higher amounts expected. There's already 15 to 20 centimeters down. So snow, blowing snow, you know the drill, and lots of school divisions are closed. These are entirely closed. Lord Selkirk, Borderlands, Seine River, Prairie Rose, Evergreen, Rolling River, Garden Valley, and Sunrise. Hanover School Division closed, but staff to work from home. Same situation in Red River Valley, staff to work from home, but it's closed. Finally, just want to mention Gretna, classes from 9 to 12, kids in grade 9 to 12 are closed because of the storm. A beautiful Plains Division, you're open, but buses aren't running. Colony schools closed today in the Rolling River School Division, and Western School Division classes and buses are canceled. Staff to report when safe. So Rolling River, buses canceled, Colony schools closed. So that's the detail on that division. It's a big list. You can read it online, cbc.ca/Manitoba. On the highways, the perimeter is closed. Don't even think about it. Highway 16 from Neepawa to Highway 50 is also closed, and that's, of course, because of icy roads and poor conditions. In the city of Winnipeg, you can see it as well. As Heather said, you're going to get a booter or a sneaker, as I got this morning over my high tops, and it's just flying around out there. It's the light, fluffy stuff, and it's coming fast. Well, speaking of which, we're going to look ahead. What is the next few days going to look like, and how long is the snowfall going to stick around when we look at the temps? Stay tuned. We have a meteorologist on. Plus, to another story at 10 to 8. Let's look at winter driving overall. CAA in this country asks Canadians, what bad habits when it comes to winter driving do you admit to? And we're going to find out what the top 5 bad habits are. Stay with us. World Report's next.
The Israeli government is also facing a new sense of pressure from its allies to do more to prevent civilian casualties in Gaza.
Israel is at the United Nations International Court of Justice this week, facing accusations of genocide in Gaza. The case was brought by South Africa. What led that country to make this move? And a look at Israel's defense coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia Young. We begin at The Hague, where South Africa is laying out its case, accusing Israel of genocide. Israel strongly denies that claim, and it will get a chance to respond tomorrow. The CBC's Abakui Dawson is at the court with the latest.
South Africa's legal team says Israel is violating multiple articles of the Genocide Convention, which includes the mass killing of Palestinians. Lawyer Adela Hassim.
Following 7 October, Israel deployed 6,000 bombs per week. At least 200 times, it has deployed 2,000-pound bombs in southern areas of Palestine designated as safe.
Hassim says Israel is deliberately imposing conditions that make life unsustainable in Gaza. She referred to destroyed infrastructure, including medical facilities, and pointed out Israel has cut off food, water, and electricity. But international law requires proof of intent before calling events genocide.
There is an extraordinary feature in this case.
Lawyer Tembega Nogutobi gave multiple examples of Israeli officials, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, publicly making statements that he says show genocidal intent.
This refers to the biblical command by God to Saul for the retaliatory destruction of an entire group of people.
Israel will make its presentation tomorrow. It has repeatedly said it is only targeting Hamas in Gaza, not civilians, as it defends itself. A final ruling on whether this is genocide or not may take years, but the court can order provisional measures meant to prevent the humanitarian crisis in Gaza from getting even worse while the case is pending. Abby Kodasin, CBC News, London.
Canada has not taken an official position on the court case before The Hague. There are a range of viewpoints from within the federal Liberal Party. MPs Marco Mendicino and Anthony Housefather have both publicly said South Africa's case is baseless, but MP Salma Zahid is calling for the government to support the case at the International Court of Justice. A sentencing hearing for Cameron Ortis begins today in Ottawa. Ortis is a former RCMP intelligence officer. He was convicted of leaking secret information to police targets. The CBC's Catherine Tunney has been covering this case for us since the beginning and will be in the Ottawa courtroom today. Catherine, what are you expecting to hear?
We're going to hear both sides, the Crown and the defense, kind of lay out how long or how little they think that Cameron Ortis should serve behind bars. We're expecting to hear kind of wildly different opinions on that in a case that already is quite extraordinary. Remember, this is the first time that Security of Information Act charges were tried in court. And of course, Cameron Ortis was found guilty last November. And after that, the Crown came out and said, this is a man who had an extremely important position in the RCMP, and he violated that. And they have argued going to try and seek a very severe sentence, somewhere in the range of 20 years or more. Now, the defense, they have a very different take, and that's because they argue that Cameron Ortis, he served 3 years waiting for this trial, then they are going to argue that that's enough. He was presumed innocent at the time, and then that counts as time served. So ultimately, it'll be up to the judge to listen to both sides and come to a decision.
He has been found guilty. Remind us of what played out in the case.
Crown prosecutors successfully argued that Ortis, he used his position within the RCMP, leading this secret unit that had access to Canadian and allied intelligence to leak sensitive information to police targets. There are two camps of people that he leaked information to. So one is this guy, Vincent Ramos. He led this company called Phantom Secure that was selling encrypted phones to criminals. He was a Canadian based in BC. He's also accused of kind of leaking to men who were suspected of being agents of this giant global money laundering network that had ties to terrorist organization. And he's also guilty of attempting to leak information to also a man who's part of that network. Now, in an extraordinary moment in the trial, Ortis claimed that he was actually trying to protect Canada, that he had been alerted to this grave threat that a foreign entity passed on to him, and that's why he did what he did. And he also said because of the national security concerns around this case, he was never able to tell the jury, or the public what that grave threat was. Now, ultimately, of course, the jury felt that the Crown had a more convincing case, and we'll have to wait to see today how much the justice weighs that as he comes to his decision.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Catherine Tunney reporting from Ottawa. And in New York today, Donald Trump's civil fraud trial resumes. Closing arguments will be heard, but it will not be the former U.S. president doing the talking. Trump had planned to deliver his closing remarks, but a judge nixed that plan. Trump is alleged to have exaggerated his wealth on the financial statements he provided to banks, insurance companies, and others. In Taiwan, China's shadow looms over the upcoming presidential elections. The vote on Saturday is a pivotal moment for the sovereignty of the island. The outcome will shape relations with China. China wants to assert control over Taiwan. Radio-Canada's Asia correspondent Philippe Leblanc explains the global implications.
Taiwan's next president and legislators will lead the island forward at its most tense period, with the growing threat of a Chinese invasion. At political rallies, in coffee shops and daily life, China is at the heart of things. Professor Lev Nachman of Taiwan's National Chengchi University.
So what makes Taiwanese politics different from, say, the United States or Europe is the fact that the question in Taiwan that everyone has to deal with is what is our future relationship with the PRC and what direction do we want Taiwan to go in?
The ruling Democratic Progressive Party wants to maintain the status quo in the Taiwan Strait, while the two opposition parties have framed this election as a question of war versus peace. Other local issues like inflation and housing are also important. After 8 years in power, the DPP could very well win the presidency again. Political analyst Li Qide says that it's not because voters are satisfied with the party's governance, it's because of the party's tougher stance in the face of immense pressure from China. The Taiwanese election is getting global attention, and Professor Lev Nachman says it will impact world politics.
Because it's not just a matter of the Taiwan PRC relationship, but also the PRC-American relationship.
Taiwan's 19 million voters head to the polls Saturday. Philippe Leblanc, CBC News, Taipei.
The Prime Minister's office is denying allegations it misled the ethics commissioner about Justin Trudeau's recent family vacation to Jamaica. Trudeau's office says it consulted the ethics commissioner before the trip. The PMO wanted to make sure the rules were followed. But Conservative MP Michael Barrett is asking whether the commissioner was told Trudeau was staying at a resort owned by a family friend. He says it's not clear how forthcoming PMO staff were about that detail, and the vacation could be seen as a gift intended to influence a government leader. An extreme cold warning is in effect for Edmonton. Temperatures are expected to drop as low as -40 this weekend, -50 with wind chill. And as temperatures plunge, a debate over homeless encampments is taking on new urgency. Terry Reith reports.
They attacked our people.
Standing in front of Edmonton Police Headquarters, Indigenous activist Judith Gale lashes out at the forced closure of downtown homeless camps.
This is our sacred land.
But hours later and blocks away, police moved on a camp which had resisted closure Tuesday.
You're serious?
About 8 tents and makeshift shelters were taken down. Those living in them offered a warm place on a city bus as temperatures hit -24 Celsius. Under terms of a court injunction, they were offered spaces in a homeless shelter. Encampment resident Arlen Plashka wasn't interested.
I feel violated. You know, that this is my home. I have a right to maintain a way of life that I see fit.
But the city and police don't see it that way, calling the camps dangerous. This was the 8th to be dismantled in recent days, which have been subject to an intense legal battle. Chris Wiebe, who represents a coalition supporting the homeless campers, heard the news of the police action while speaking to the media after a court hearing.
This is new information. This is very serious information.
Many of those in the camps vow to rebuild, saying they would rather live in the cold than stay in shelters. Terry Reith, CBC News, Edmonton.
At cbcnews.ca, Paige Parsons has a story on the Edmonton page about why some homeless Edmontonians choose to camp outside the inner city. That story on the Edmonton page, cbcnews.ca. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. Well, we are steadily getting snowed in a little bit here. Lots of school divisions closed, issues on the highway, their perimeter shut down. The storm has arrived. Thanks for joining us. We'll walk you through all of it so we have a good, safe day here in our snowy province. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the CBC Listen app. So I'll do the full school closures list in a moment. This hour on the show, we're going to touch base with some people who are thrilled watching the snow come down and go over our boot tops this morning in Winnipeg. They run ski trails around Manitoba. We'll touch base with a couple of different spots. Also, we'll have a detailed conversation with a meteorologist to find out after the storms move through, what is winter looking like? How long is the snow going to stick around? And CAA had recently did their annual survey of Canadians' habits on the roadways, and they'd hoped speeding would decrease, but it has not. It's in fact becoming a bigger problem in this country. This year, they also, in their survey, uniquely asked people to admit their bad winter driving habits, their poor habits, and what they do. So if you're brave enough to tell us what your worst winter driving habits are, you can always call our listener line. Or if you feel more comfortable, what are the worst winter driving habits that you see on the road that you wish people would stop doing that would improve safety? 788-3205. We can take calls on that. We'll talk to CAA about this national survey just ahead of 8. Right now, it's 7:11, as mentioned. It's time for headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, snowplows are out to clear your way this morning. And that's in the city of Winnipeg. There are also snowplows out on highways, but highways are treacherous, and some, as Marcy mentioned, are closed, including the perimeter highway around Winnipeg, as well as Highway 16 is closed from Neepawa to Highway 50. A former RCMP officer and advocate for racial justice is applauding Manitoba's police watchdog. The Independent Investigation Unit is asking its Alberta counterpart to investigate a fatal police shooting of a Nigerian international student. After it was revealed an officer involved in that shooting is a close relative to someone at Manitoba Justice, Alain Bobineau gives the IIU credit for recognizing it could appear biased. We're going to hear more from him in our next news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Here are your school division closures to this hour. Completely closed: Lord Selkirk, Borderland, Seine River, Prairie Rose, Evergreen, Garden Valley, Sunrise, and Interlake. Partial closures are otherwise affected. Hanover School Division completely closed, however, staff to work from home. Red River Valley closed, but again, staff working from home. Schools are open in Beautiful Plains. They are open, but buses aren't running. In Gretna, grade 9 to 12 classes are closed because of the storm. Rolling River has canceled buses today. Colony schools in Rolling River are closed today. Western School Division classes and buses are canceled, but staff are asked to report. And finally, Prairie Spirit is partially closed. So school is closed in Manitou, in that area, and no buses are running. So in the Manitou area, no buses running. In Prairie Spirit Division, that is what is up. Abby Adeyemi.
Yeah, Marcy, good morning. We're just looking at the weather statement here. Winnipeg and southern Manitoba are actually under that special weather statement as the Alberta Clipper continues to pile more snow on what has already fallen. We're talking about the Red River Valley, Steinbach, St. Adolphe, Selkirk, Maurice, Altona, and Co. And after we're looking at all of this, we should be seeing about 15 centimeters will be on the ground. And if we head to western Manitoba, the snowfall warning still stands. We're going to be seeing about 20 centimeters that has already dropped, and more will still pile up on that. And if we are talking away from that, it's also cold in the northern part of the province. Like, we have that extreme cold warning. And looking at Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, Pukatuogan, they're telling us that the wind chill is going to feel like minus 45 to minus 50. So that's like frostbite in minutes. So for the people up there, they really need to take care. But let's just talk about the temperature in Winnipeg. Currently, we are at minus 15 degrees, and we're still experiencing this, and we should be seeing heading to the temperature is going to be falling to minus 19 this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
We're going to have a bit more of a deeper look ahead with a meteorologist in a moment, just because this is our first significant snowfall of 2024. That I love. Corey Funk out our studio window.
Thumbs up from someone walking by all bundled up.
Yeah, total hood over the face and trudging through, smile on their face. Gotta love Manitobans. All right, so where should you not be driving, and where can't you drive?
Yeah, I'll let you know. I mean, earlier I'll let you know, give just an idea of what the commute's kind of like. Heard about a snowplow up on the median lane. Inkster and McPhillips may still be there, may not. It was blocking the median lane westbound Inkster. Also heard about a jackknife semi on eastbound Centerport, blocking the entirety of eastbound Centerport. Christina, who phoned in with that, said you can get around on the Sturgeon yield, kind of, but just heads up, it is going to slow your commute. Westbound on Centerport is also very icy and snowy, so heads up there. Highway update from Tyler, who called the commuter line as well. Highway 75, making your way from Morris up to Winnipeg. He said Morris to St. Agath, pretty poor visibility overall, but fairly drivable. But then after St. Agath, you get your visibility back, but a little bit more, but you get more drifts. So just heads up if you are heading on Highway 75, keep it real slow if you're there. But of course, the perimeter right now is closed entirely. So do keep an eye on that. You can you just avoid the perimeter, as well as Highway 16 is also closed due to poor conditions from Highway 50 near Woodside all the way to Neepawa at Highway 5. That's what's going on the highways. We're also asking you, and give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you see anything, 204-788-3093. Also, we're asking for your pictures as well of the snow. There's a nice side to it.
Yeah, we would love it because, on this morning, of course, in the radio, survival information and such, but we're on YouTube. So if you send us those pics, we can get them up on YouTube. And then I always, if you're snowed in, you can look around the province and see what it's like.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing that we like to do, but we've got a few people writing in.
Yeah, Brian Workington sent this beautiful photo of like a nice little idyllic little fence with trees in the background and a nice little kind of streetscape in a suburban area. It just looks kind of nice, idyllic.
Steinbach, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So thanks for that, Brian. You can email us, be like Brian. Email us, radio893@cbc.ca. We might mention your name on the radio, and you might even end up your pictures on YouTube.
It is 7:17 now, because this is the big first significant storm of 2024. First time we've seen the whole perimeter close this winter. We thought we would ask this morning, how long might it stick around, all this snow that's flying our way? Scott Kaler is president and chief scientologist at WeatherLogics. Hi there.
Morning.
So can you tell us a little bit about how long this might stick around and what kind of temperatures and such we see and trends moving ahead in Manitoba?
Sure. As we go through the day today, the snow will begin to taper off. So the bulk of the snow has already fallen. Winnipeg has received 14.6 centimeters up till 6 a.m., with approximately another 5 on the way today. And so as we go through the day, it will slowly end, but temperatures are going to fall. So this is the beginning of a big deep freeze that we haven't seen so far this winter. Temperatures will drop into the minus 20s by tomorrow, and wind chills will be quite cold due to these strong winds.
We were looking, Scott, early. Abby was mentioning those amounts of snowfall already. What's down? You said 14.6 to this hour in Winnipeg. We expected, I think, right around that for the total. So are we near the end of the snowfall here in Winnipeg, you think?
Well, definitely the bulk of the snow has fallen, but I've been looking at some of the maps this morning, and the snow is not quite over. So this system is a bit uncharacteristic for an Alberta clipper. Normally these clippers will move through very quickly over, maybe 4 to 6 hours and drop a few centimeters, but this one is stalled out, and so that's why we're getting a lot more snow out of it, and probably a little bit more still to come today. So the total may end up closer to 20 centimeters by the time all is said and done.
And is that trajectory also that increase rather also reflected in what you're expecting for total amounts in Western Manitoba, Riding Mountain? Are they going to be above? They were already expecting 10 to 20. They'll be above that then probably.
Yeah, Western Manitoba for sure, especially around Riding Mountain. I read some reports last night. They had already received about 20 centimeters there. So I would expect some areas around Riding Mountain will probably be close to 30 centimeters or a foot by the time it's done. So the system overall has overachieved a bit, and that's because it's stalled out for so long.
Why is it happening so much, later in the season than usual?
Well, this year we've seen the influence of El Nino, and El Nino is warm waters in the central Pacific Ocean. Because the Pacific is such a large area of our Earth, it affects global weather patterns, and across Western Canada, what El Nino tends to do is give us warmer and drier winters, but usually that influence is strongest early in the winter, and so we saw the third warmest December on record, and not a lot of snow. But now as we've moved into mid-January, El Nino is still present, but its influence isn't as strong, perhaps. So we're going to see more cold weather for the rest of January. I don't think, February will be, a total deep freeze, but definitely the weather pattern that we saw for most of the winter so far has taken a dramatic shift.
Are you a skier? Are you one of the people that's smiling this morning or not?
Well, I'm not really smiling. I've kind of mixed emotions. I mean, on the one hand, we did need snow for farmers, for recreation and things, but if it was up to me, I would be fine just with a nice warm and dry winter.
Well, as you said, we're in the thick of it now. Really appreciate having you on this morning to give us the trajectory and those current amounts of snow that have already fallen so we can prepare for the next couple of days once this is moved through. Thanks for being with us, Scott.
You're welcome. Anytime.
That's Scott Kaler, President and Chief Scientist at WeatherLogic. So if you want to call our listener line with snow stories or winter driving bad habits, 788-3205. You can send pics for our YouTube channel to Radio 893 at cbc.ca.
Whether you're hanging out or out on the move, stay in the know with CBC Listen. The cost of living with Paul Havershrud goes beyond facts and figures.
Real estate is the 800-pound gorilla of Canada's economy.
And What on Earth with Laura Lynch explores the climate change crisis, problems and solutions.
What happened that made you start to think and see climate change differently?
The Cost of Living and What on Earth. Available now on CBC Listen.
Time right now is 7:22 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being along with us this morning. Travis, Corey, and Abby behind the glass. Heather Wells in our news department. Still ahead on the program in 1 hour's time from now. We hope you can be with us after 8 o'clock. As a former member of a Winnipeg South Sudanese community, we are going to talk to a guest who is calling for greater accountability for Winnipeg police after the 19-year-old black man was shot by police officers on New Year's Eve, shot and killed. We'll have that conversation after 8 o'clock. And this is a woman who has a long history with advocacy in our community and was directly involved with a previous police shooting of a community member. So stay tuned. We'll have that conversation coming up after 8. In addition, I really want to point you to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, to watch video of a conversation, unedited, that I believe it's about 20 minutes in total, that Nadia Kidwai moderated on the weekend morning show between Devon Clunas, former chief of police of the Winnipeg Police Service, and Delil Loka, who works with newcomer youth and has in our community for the past 8 years. Really important conversation in moving forward in our community and understanding what is happening with the lack of trust between many communities and police. And so please check that out. It, I know, was aired on television news last night. It was on the weekend morning show. But if you missed it, check it out on your time. It is unedited and on our site. Well, before we turn our attention to morning sports, we have time to hear a little bit of a tune by Kibra. This one's called James. Kibra. This one's called James. Maybe she could be singing Jets. Would have a different texture, though, be more celebratory. Jets have a chance to set a new franchise record in sports with a win against Chicago tonight.
Yeah, they do. The team hasn't lost in regulation since mid-December, Marcy, so a victory tonight would set a new franchise record for wins in a row at 8. Still, forward Nick Ehlers is saying ahead of this game against Chicago, his team is not resting on its laurels.
We still haven't accomplished anything. We're not even halfway through the season yet. Everyone saw what happened last year around this time, and you know, we have enough guys from last year to make sure that doesn't happen again. It's a matter of being able to not get comfortable and keeping it going. That's something that we've been able to do, and that's something that we got to keep doing.
All realism, Nick Ehlers. This time last year, of course, the Jets were second in the Central Division, just behind Dallas, and then we know how that all ended. A bit of good news, although it's unfortunately at Connor Bedard's health's expense. Chicago announced yesterday the wunderkind Bedard will be out 6 to 8 weeks after undergoing surgery to repair a fractured jaw. Puck drop between Chicago and Winnipeg tonight, 7 o'clock from Canada Life Centre.
Meantime, the NHL Players Association is introducing a new program.
Yeah, this is called First Line. Actually, the ex-Jets captain Blake Wheeler has been a driving force behind this. It's going to prioritize players' overall wellness. Sheldon Kennedy, the Brandon native, a former NHL player who has spoken openly about his struggles and experience as a sexual abuse survivor, says this program shows a shift from a reactive approach to mental health to a more proactive approach.
What's happened here in the announcement is huge, because what it's done is it's set the table for not just the NHL players, but I mean, you know, they're looked up to by many young athletes and individuals, young and old, around the world. And I think by them acknowledging that this is an important area around all forms of mental health, mental illness, addiction, and all of the stress and worries that come with it, I think is a critical and a very important day.
Kennedy says he expects the First Line program to have an immediate effect on junior leagues across the country, as well as the hockey community as a whole.
And let's finish with the latest in football and basketball.
Yeah, another game in LA and another loss for the Raptors, Marcy. Unlike their 1-point defeat to the Lakers on Tuesday, their 6-point loss to the Clippers last night wasn't a case of the referees beating them. Instead, it was Kawhi Leonard beating them. Not sure if that's much better. 29 points for Leonard as he led L.A. And one of the NFL's most successful coaches, the most successful where the Seattle Seahawks are concerned, is leaving his job after 14 seasons, including a Super Bowl win. Pete Carroll is stepping aside. Carroll, one of only 3 coaches to win a National University title and a Super Bowl. He'll head to the Hall of Fame one day. And he will have gotten there, Marcy, doing things his way. And that is not the old school, tough love, stereotypical approach for an NFL coach. Carroll not only allowed his players to express themselves, he encouraged that they do so. And Carroll himself was expressing himself yesterday in thanking his wife, Glenna.
I've been blessed with the rarest of best friends and mentor, loving partner. This is worth crying for. Glenna, nobody would ever understand how significant she's been through all of the stuff that we've been through, and how important she is. She's just been the angel in my life.
Too seldom, Marcy, are the significant others of pro athletes and coaches given their just due for being part of a high-stress pro sports existence. So good on Pete Carroll for that. Meantime, another coach, the most successful in NFL history, Bill Belichick, is reportedly going to announce he's leaving his job today. If so, do not expect the warm, fuzzy clip from Bill Belichick that we just heard from Pete Carroll.
Might sound different. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Scott Regier with Morning Sports. Full list of school closures and divisions closures affected by the storm after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, we've got blowing snow. It is minus 15. We expect a couple more centimeters of snow to fall through the day. The temperature is also falling, going down to minus 19 by this afternoon with the risk of frostbite. Well, you could end up with a boot full of snow when you step outside this morning. 14 centimeters of snow has already fallen on Winnipeg, with more on the way. Winnipeg and southern Manitoba are under a special weather statement as that Alberta Clipper piles more snow on what's already fallen. When it's all done and moved out later tonight, 15 centimeters will be on the ground. In western Manitoba, the snowfall warning still stands there. Up to 20 centimeters will have fallen by the time the system moves off this afternoon. And to the north, parts of northern Manitoba have an extreme cold warning. And when you factor in the wind chill values for Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, Puckatawagan, and Brochet will be about minus 45 to minus 50 this morning. Well, snowplows are out in Winnipeg this morning. You can drive city streets with relative ease. Sidewalks, though, are a different story, as are highways. Snowplows are out on the highways, but still, Highway 16 is closed from Neepawa to Highway 50. The perimeter highway around Winnipeg is still closed. It closed late last night, and once again, snow clearing crews are out there. A former Mountie from Manitoba says the RCMP's race-based data collection project should be coupled with education. The RCMP is collecting race-based data to better understand experiences of Indigenous, Black, and other racialized people. Marge Hudson served 31 years with the RCMP. She is from Barons River First Nation, and she says she faced racism and harassment when she was an officer.
There is systemic racism in the RCMP, there's no doubt. Do people understand what systemic racism is? Our commissioner of the RCMP at the time did not know what systemic racism was. So yes, it is important to educate people to know what it is.
RCMP launched the project Monday in select Canadian communities, including Thompson. The data will be collected for 1 year before it is released. Hospital beds are not enough, according to an emergency room doctor in Winnipeg. Doug Ailefson is a former Liberal politician who also works in the ER at Grace Hospital. He was happy to hear the NDP government announce plans to add 36 acute care beds to St. Boniface Hospital, but he hopes they're up to the challenge of staffing those beds.
When people say beds, we mean staffed beds. You know, without staff, particularly nursing staff and support staff, a bed is just a piece of furniture. You can't put a patient in it unless there's someone to look after them in it. So we need to find the staff.
Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says the beds at St. B will open in a sustainable manner, and the hope is to have all 36 operational and staffed within a year. Manitoba's police watchdog has handed off its investigation into the death of a Nigerian international student at the hands of Winnipeg police. The Independent Investigation Unit has referred the case to its counterpart in Alberta after learning an officer involved in the shooting is a close relative of someone at Manitoba Justice. Alain Babineau is a retired RCMP officer who works for the anti-racism lobby group Red Coalition. He hopes the final report from Alberta will provide some answers.
The first stage of justice is getting a fair and transparent investigation. And I think the release of the final report, regardless of whether charges are made or not, would also provide added solace, if you will, or at least added justice to the process.
19-year-old Afolabi Opaso was shot and killed on New Year's Eve after police were called for a well-being check. Firefighters in Winnipeg will soon have a new member with a nose for arson. A specially trained dog, a Labrador Retriever, is being prepared for the assignment in Virginia. Jason Federow is Winnipeg's Chief Officer of Fire Investigations. He says the city has seen a spike in suspicious fires.
The dog will be able to help our investigators by assisting them in finding areas where they'll be able to collect samples of where possible ignitable liquids were used to accelerate the fire. And we can take those samples, send them off to our lab, and have a forensic chemist be able to analyze that.
Federow says the city has a deal with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The Bureau will train the dog and a Winnipeg firefighter who will become its designated handler. Federow says they may get a call to help with some arson investigations in the northern U.S. Want to forget winter? Stop and smell the scent of floral gardens from around the world? You can do it right here in Winnipeg. Fleur de Ville Voyage features 15 mannequins covered in flowers and plant material inspired by global travel destinations. Each installation is designed by a local florist. Carmen Gray and her partner are one of the florists participating from Winnipeg. Gray says they were inspired by an Indigenous creation story of sky women.
The sky woman falls and lands in what we call on planet Earth, but animals have placed her at the back of a turtle. We're trying to recreate her and using plant material from the white shell. So we have birch, we have cedar, we have some poplar branches, dogwoods, and then the color palette.
You can see the Sky Woman mannequin and all the others at Fleur de Ville Voyage at the Leaf on until January 21st. And you can see more Manitoba news and all the school closures. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
It's kind of like living in a snow globe this morning.
It really is. It was really coming down, but it's kind of that light stuff.
It is. So it's flying around, right? Which will make shoveling, if you don't do it soon enough, that's always the thing. When do you shovel, right?
Yeah. Do you wait until it stops completely?
Well, that means the end of the day today. Let's get into what's happening in that regard. School closures. First, though, maybe. I'm just looking at Abby here. I think I will do this first. So I know we're at 7:30. A lot of people already have been updated by your division. But because the list is so long and this is the first major storm of the season, I will read out the full list of closures. So there's lots of them. 8 are completely closed. The divisions in Manitoba due to the storm here. Lord Selkirk School Division closed. Borderland closed. Seine River, Prairie Rose, Evergreen closed. Garden Valley, Sunrise, and Interlake closed. Otherwise affected, Hanover School Division closed, but staff are to report to work from home. Red River Valley closed, staff also to work from home. Schools are open in beautiful Plains, but buses aren't running. In Gretna, classes are closed for grades 9 to 12 only. In Rolling River, buses are canceled today. Colony schools are also closed today in that division. Western School Division, classes and buses are also canceled, but staff to report there if it's safe. And finally, Prairie Spirit is partially closed, so schools closed in the Manitou area, and no buses are running entirely. So there's the list. And now to Abby.
Yes, talking about shoveling, we have a special weather statement for southern Manitoba, talking about Winnipeg, the parts of the Red River Valley. We will be seeing this special statement as the snow continues to pile. We're looking at Steinbach all the way to Emerson, Modern Winkler, Morris, Port La Prairie, and Lee. So far, Winnipeg and the Red River Valley has actually seen about 8 to 14 centimeters of snow, and we're expecting it to get about 15 centimeters over 36 hours. And if we're looking at the snow warning for the western part, we hear that the Riding Mountain area will be seeing about 20 centimeters once the system moves off this afternoon. So you need to expect more snow. More even than that, as we heard earlier in the hour. It's tracking fast. So Winnipeg had, and these numbers are changing as we're talking, but Winnipeg had 14.6 centimeters already, and Westman last night was up at 20. So yeah, lots more. We'll see if it tapers or if even more comes, but it's coming. And up north, we have extreme cold warning for northern Manitoba. It's going to be hitting mostly the northern regions, and the wind chill is going to be feeling like minus 45 to 50 this morning. So you might want to take extreme care while you're up there. But right now, Winnipeg is currently at minus 15. Good to mention north because it's not as cold down here. It doesn't feel like that cold out there, but man, it's snowy. All right, Corey Funk, just a reminder of what we need to know about the commute.
Yes, so the first thing you got to know is that the perimeter is still closed this morning, so you cannot go on the perimeter. I actually got a call on the voicemail asking, hey, does that mean we can still cross the perimeter? Yes, you can cross it. You just can't go on it, or else you could face a fine. So do look over that. Also, Highway 16 from Highway 50 near Woodside all the way to Neepawa also closed due to poor conditions right now. Here in the city, got a couple calls, things you want to look out for. Jonathan called to say that on St. Anne Road, heading towards downtown, there just past Fermor, there's a stalled semi in the right-hand lane just outside the superstore there. You can get around it, but it is, you can imagine, it is going to cause some big backups for folks, so look out for that. Here in downtown, Julie says actually the roads aren't ideal, obviously, but there's still enough grip, not too polished, that is slippery, that's super slippery so far. And it's not too congested either, says Julie. But also just further down Portage, heard from Helen that it's just very slow going and tough to see if just around the Portage Moray Bridge area. So that's what we're seeing out there right now. But if you see something else, if you're walking, biking, we've seen some cyclists out there already this morning, driving, give me a call. Tell me what you're seeing. I can tell you the sidewalks are very trudgy. I don't know how else to call it. But if you see something else, give me a call on that CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know. 204-788-3093.
I wholly support the use of your word trudgy. I like it.
Thank you. I just spoke it into existence.
It sounds like what it feels like. Well, you know what? On mornings like this, we can be accused of doing too much weather, getting too serious, the serious tone. Some people are already writing to me saying, you know what? As long as you're safe out there, you can have a good drive. And that is true. You just got to be mindful. So let's change the tone, because the next two guests love the snow and they're super happy about it. And that means that they have recreational activities that involve winter. At the start of the hour, we talked about the weather and the days ahead. And for people who've been waiting to get in some winter fun, now is your time, because after this snow is all said and done, what we heard earlier this hour is we are in for some cold, which means the snow is going to stay. Lori Penton is the manager at Windsor Park Nordic Centre. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
And Yvonne Rideout is the executive director of Snowman. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
All right, you guys want to do the cheer? Woohoo! Is that how it feels, Lori? Tell me what what your feeling is this morning looking at this coming down.
Well, I'm just doing the happy dance, but it's really great. The snow, all the ski programs, all the young kids who love winter at Windsor Park is finally can get going on their new skis they got for Christmas or whatever. It's just a great. It's like game on. Here we go. Winter's here finally.
And you had to wait for a while. And Yvonne, how about you with Snowman? What are you thinking about the snowmobilers are going to be thinking this morning?
Well, my snow dance worked, so we're glad about that, and we're really pleased with getting all this blast of snow right now, so we can get more clubs open and more trail system open throughout the province.
Lori, what has the cross-country trail situation been up to this point? I mean, we have had some snow.
The first bit that came through Winnipeg in early December was shoveled by a bunch of volunteers while all the ski club people were shoveling patches to get up, stuff to run their programs on. A lot of the jackrabbit programs in the three main clubs in Winnipeg, to some degree, were running their programs even before Christmas on small areas that had been shoveled and packed, and so now. You can tell how eager they were, and now they're really going to be happy to just get really skiing.
So a dump like this, 14.6 centimeters, Lori, so far in Winnipeg already this morning, and we were expecting 15 total, so we may even top that. Does that mean that you can pretty confidently say that, all right, now we're good, it's going to stay, most things are going to be open this weekend and ready to roll?
Exactly, yeah. We're planning to open a bit of a soft opening tomorrow, Friday, and then we've full on over the weekend. It takes a day and a half to process a snowfall like this. And, of course, the blowing snow is, hits kind of the open areas. But, we expect the full operation to be up and running by Saturday. And just hopefully the snow stays and we get some fresh rejuvenation of the snow. It doesn't. This could be it for 2 months.
Never know.
Who knows how it goes? But certainly, it's everything we need to get most of the trails open.
As I mentioned, it's late. But from your perspective, Lori, have you ever had to open the trails this late in this season?
I don't think we've ever opened this late. We have opened in January in some years. I forget exactly which one, but they are. It's certainly unusual, and this is definitely the latest.
How about for you, Yvonne? How late in the season is this for snowmobilers to get going from your perspective?
Mid-January is when most of the clubs would normally open. We do have some clubs in the west, the Interlake, and open already. And this snowfall will certainly allow the clubs in the east to get going.
What are the most popular areas in Manitoba for people to go snowmobiling?
The most popular would be the Whiteshell. The Whiteshell sees a lot of people from Winnipeg headed out that way. So this snow will certainly allow those eastern clubs to get the groomers out on the snow. There's clubs that have already been packing, so we're ready to go.
What do you love about it, Yvonne, being on your snowmobile? What do you feel like when you're out there?
Well, it's been studied that one day of snowmobiling, the health effects of that last a week with your mood and so on. So to get out there and enjoy the snow, there's not a better feeling.
Have you done it since you were young, or did you fall in love with it later in your life?
Well, the first snowmobile we had when I was 13.
Okay. You know, I didn't ride a snowmobile until I was at a radio station. My first job was in southeastern Manitoba. I was a city kid here in Winnipeg my whole life, and got in a snowmobile out there. And it really is. It was faster than I thought. Like when I was on it, I'm like, wow, we were not moving that fast, but it's exhilarating. And when you're doing it safely and you are out on those trails, it really is a unique feeling if people haven't done that.
It is. It's quite the feeling to, be riding, get together with a group of people or your family members and get riding, stop at a shelter and have a hot dog, and it's great to get out there.
So can you both leave me with where people can get more information if we kind of put a smile on their face about all this snow? So Lori, for you, if people want to learn more about Windsor Park, the ski trails or other cross country around Manitoba, where should they look around Winnipeg?
Well, the Cross Country Ski Association of Manitoba website, which is the CCSAM, which is Cross Country Ski of Manitoba, has a Where to Ski tab on there, and so all the clubs participate around the province to give trail reports.
Awesome.
And in Winnipeg, we have windsorparknordic.ca. We're also linked to that site for the trail reporting, but we're at the summertime Windsor Park Golf Course on Desmirons, and 10 kilometers of trails and lighted trails until 10 o'clock every night. And
how about you, Yvonne? Which websites should people go to if they want to learn more about the different clubs around Manitoba for snowmobiling?
People can visit snowman.mb.ca. They can view our interactive map and see what trails are open and what's closed, and plan their trip directly from the map or on the Map Gears app on their phone.
Perfect. Before you guys go, I'm curious, do you both have the same snow happy dance?
We'll have to get together and check it out.
Yes, we'll have to do that.
We need a camera for that for that part of the interview. All right, you guys, take care. Enjoy the weather and enjoy the snow. Lori, thank you.
All right, enjoy the day.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Yvonne.
Okay, thank you.
Lori Penton, manager for Windsor Park Nordic Centre, the CCAM website for more information about skiing in the province, cross country, and Yvonne Rideout, the executive director of Snowman. You can go to snowman.mb.ca for more on the trails.
Imagine mannequins brought to life with flowers, a journey of cultural discovery through florals. Fleur de Ville Voyage is coming to the Leaf, presented by the Assiniboine Park Conservancy, and CBC is a proud sponsor. Local florists transform the Leaf Gardens into an exhibit you don't want to miss. Fleur de Ville Voyage, January 11th to 21st. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
It is right now 12 minutes to 8 o'clock on a challenging morning. Corey's in with an update on some traffic things.
Yeah, but another highway closure to let you know about. Highway 3 and Highway 14, portions of those are closed right now. So Highway 3, essentially from Crystal City all the way until you hit Highway 14 around Rosebrook, and then from there to Highway 75 is closed. So that's right southern Manitoba, not far north of the border there. So it's pretty much, it means you can't drive on Highway 3 and Highway 14 from Crystal City right through to Highway 75. So do look out for that. Also, just an update or a reminder, Perimeter Highway remains closed, the entirety of Perimeter Highway, as well as Highway 16 from Highway 50 to Neepawa both ways. So do look out for that. Hearing about roughly not great conditions, particularly on Highway 75, pretty poor visibility and snow drifts as well. So do be careful if you are driving southern Manitoba, making your way up or to Winnipeg from the Morris Emerson area and heading up north, or heading down south for that matter as well. If you see anything else, though, give me a call on that CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
And continue to send those photos in as well if you've got them to Radio 893 at cbc.ca. We're sharing on our YouTube channel if you want to check us out online. Well, let's get to some data about driving in the winter. The Canadian Automobile Association, CAA, asked Canadians to list dangerous driving behaviors, those that you're most concerned about and those that you also admit doing yourself. Speeding was a top concern. To talk more about the findings, Kristen Darbell is with us this morning. She is Senior Director of Public Affairs at the Canadian Automobile Association. Hi.
Good morning.
So we're obviously into wintertime driving conditions in much of Canada right now. The snow, the cold, the ice reared its ugly head in Manitoba this past week. At CAA, what are your major concerns in regard to winter driving and speeding?
So our concern right now is that speed-related collisions are on a rise, and it actually at this point accounts for a quarter of the fatal collisions on our road, according to the latest data that's available from Transport Canada. So our study showed that 9 in 10 Canadians said that they are deeply worried about speeding in residential areas. And we can see that with the numbers. So they have a right concern, or they're allowed to be concerned because, we are seeing an increase in fatalities. However, what's even more concerning is the fact that 1 in 5 are admitting to actually speeding. And again, this is the people who are admitting to doing this and speeding in residential areas. So we can assume that these numbers are conservative, and there's probably a lot more who are speeding in residential zones.
I know there was a move here to look at lowering the speed limit in residential zones down to 30 from 50. What should people understand about posted speed limits?
Number one, speed limits are posted for ideal weather. So when you see the speed limit, remember that that's for ideal weather, and winter is not ideal weather. So now more than ever, it's so important to respect the speed limit or even drive slower if you can. And the reason why we encourage that is because, I know everyone wants to get to their destination, whether it's dropping their kids off at school, getting to work, doing their errands, going to see friends and family. I get it. We all want to get to our destination. We want to get there as fast as we can. But the science doesn't support speeding, because if you travel even 10 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, you might shave off on average about 4 minutes on your trip. So just think about that, 4 minutes. It's not a lot of time that you're shaving off, but you're increasing the likelihood of a collision by 60%. So are those 4 minutes really worth potentially risking your life or others on the road?
Is it time in this country to consider signs that are, this would be at great expense, I respect, but that are digital? So in Canada, it might say 100. I'm looking to the highway now. But maybe in the winter, that automatically changes to 80. And at what point should we look at maybe different signage for different seasons?
That's a great suggestion. I know that different municipalities, different provinces are looking at a ton of different ways that they can encourage or curb people's speeding habits. Dynamic signing is obviously a newer one and would require quite a bit of an investment from the municipality, but we're also seeing speed radars, we're seeing traffic calming, we're seeing, adding planters and changing the way that a road is even built in sort of like newer developments and making them a lot narrower to encourage people not to speed, because if you have an open, straight, big road, people are more likely to start creeping up and start speeding, versus if you have a windy, narrow road, someone's more likely to actually slow down. So we come at it from a public education perspective, which is why we do this study every year, is we try to figure out what are Canadians admitting to doing, what's worrying them, and how can we remind the driver how to be a safe driver on the road.
From a safety point of view, is there a difference between speeding on the highway and speeding in residential areas?
So speeding is speeding. You shouldn't do it regardless. However, the dangers are slightly different between speeding on the highway and speeding in the residential zone. When you're speeding on the highway, you're going at quite significant speeds, and if you were to collide with someone else, another vehicle or another obstacle, because your speed is so fast, your chance of serious injury or death in a collision is quite high. Now, when you're in a residential zone, while you might be doing 60 kilometers an hour instead of 50 kilometers an hour, you might think, well, I'm not doing 120, I should be fine. But the risk in a residential zone is your collision might not be with another car. It might be with a person, someone walking their dog, a child going to school, a cyclist. So they're both dangerous. They just have different outcomes.
You talked about people's attitudes, being worried about speed. But what other trends have you noticed over the last few years in terms of changes in driving behavior from Canadians?
So we started to see during the pandemic this increase in speeding and aggressive driving. What happened during the pandemic is no one was on the road. Everyone was, locked up in their homes. So if you were the one vehicle on the road and you had an open road and no one in your way, it kind of made it easy for people to speed or to drive a little bit more aggressively. We were kind of hoping to see that behavior change once more people came onto the road. And kind of go back to where we used to be. But instead, we still see this worry and people admitting to speeding and this aggressive driving. And on top of that, we're seeing more people on the road, more cyclists, more pedestrians, more people out and about. So when you put the two together, it's not a good thing to see those two sort of collide and collide, I guess, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm. Well, why did you ask people specifically about dangerous driving behaviors they admit to doing themselves as well in this?
So it's one thing to say that you're worried about something. We want to know what actually Canadians are doing so that we can talk about it. And we did ask them about the top dangerous driving behaviors that they admitted to doing. We had a top 5 list. Speeding on the highway was number 1. Engaging with technology in their car, so being distracted while they were driving, was number 2. Speeding in residential zone was number 3. Driving well over the speed limit was number 4. And number 5 was driving when the driver was too tired. So you could see in the top 5 things that people are admitting to, speeding covers 3 of those points.
Christine, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Christine Darbell is the Senior Director of Public Affairs at the Canadian Automobile Association, CAA, and this has prompted us to ask you, what dangerous winter driving habits drive you crazy? What do you see out there, or what are you willing to admit to? So here's a smattering of what you're writing in with. Tailgating, just slow down people, not signaling till almost through the turn, forgetting that four-wheel drive, someone wrote, is four-wheel go, not stop. So they drive too fast, tailgate, pass when they could be patient, and then the car beside you gets that flurry of a whiteout because the snow's flying around. Headlights on high beam, blinding everyone, people are writing in. Drivers who don't clear the snow from the car before driving, and not having snow tires. So you're writing in about all kinds of habits that are driving you crazy out there, that are dangerous for you on the road. By the way, that pilot project to slow down in residential zones in Winnipeg, it's involved in 4 neighborhoods in the city, from 50 down to 30 or 40. And we're coming up on a year of that pilot project in March, so we'll have to update how it has gone. If you want to weigh in on winter driving and how we can improve things, dynamic signing, seasonal signs, testing, 788-3205. Heather Wells has headlines now.
Good morning. Well, more highways are closing in southern Manitoba as more snow falls. Highway 3 is now closed from the junction near Morden to south of Crystal City. Highway 4 is closed from Highway 75 to the junction of Highway 34. And 16, the Yellowhead, is closed from Neepawa to Highway 50. The perimeter highway still closed around Winnipeg. It's taking longer to get around Winnipeg this morning. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority this morning advises of possible delays in home care. Clients whose visits will be postponed or canceled will be contacted by phone. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So 788-3093 if you have anything else to add to that traffic list in the city or out. It's calmed a bit in downtown Winnipeg, only that you can see a little bit more. The winds are down, so it's still minus 15. Beware of light snow and blowing snow, and just take it easy. In Winnipeg, forecast-wise, we already have nearly 15 centimeters of snow down. That's the total amount we were expecting, so we'll see if we get more. Westman's already got 20 centimeters down. Again, we're going to see what happens. This should taper off through the day. To the north, though, an extreme cold warning on top of things. Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, and Puck dealing with cold wind chills around minus 50 this morning. So that's another thing to watch in the weather. On our school closures, you can check out the list online, cbc.ca/Manitoba. There are many this morning due to the storm. And stay with us, because after 8 o'clock, as mentioned, a former member of Winnipeg's South Sudanese community reacts to a police shooting on New Year's Eve.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Nicole Byer has made a living talking to people and being funny. She's so good at it that she's got podcasts, TV shows, and she hosts the reality show Nailed It.
You guys really have your work cut out for yourselves. Jacques and I are going to go have a margarita.
She'll tell you how she juggles it all while living with ADHD, or as she says, maybe because of it. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1 and on the CBC Listen app.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Israel is at the United Nations International Court of Justice this week, facing accusations of genocide in Gaza. The case was brought by South Africa. What led that country to make this move? And a look at Israel's defense coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia Young. South Africa alleges Israel's actions in Gaza amount to genocide. This morning, it started laying out that claim at the International Court of
places
Justice.
Israel's genocidal acts and omissions within the broader context of Israel's 75-year apartheid.
That is South African Ambassador Vusi Madonsela speaking at The Hague. Tomorrow, Israel says it will vigorously defend itself against these claims. Abby Kwadasan has the latest.
South Africa's legal team says Israel is violating multiple articles of the Genocide Convention, which includes the mass killing of Palestinians. Lawyer Adila Hassim.
Following 7 October, Israel deployed 6,000 bombs per week. At least 200 times it has deployed 2,000-pound bombs in southern areas of Palestine designated as safe.
Hassim says Israel is deliberately imposing conditions that make life unsustainable in Gaza. She referred to destroyed infrastructure, including medical facilities, and pointed out Israel has cut off food, water, and electricity. But international law requires proof of intent before calling events genocide.
There is an extraordinary feature in this case.
Lawyer Tambega Nogutobi gave multiple examples of Israeli officials, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, publicly making statements that he says show genocidal intent.
This refers to the biblical command by God to Saul for the retaliatory destruction of an entire group of people.
Israel will make its presentation tomorrow. It has repeatedly said it is only targeting Hamas in Gaza, not civilians, as it defends itself. A final ruling on whether this is genocide or not may take years, but the court can order provisional measures meant to prevent the humanitarian crisis in Gaza from getting even worse while the case is pending. Abby Kwadasan, CBC News, London.
Canada's position on this case is still ambiguous. Janice McGregor joins us now from our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, what kind of stance is the government expected to take here?
Well, it was interesting, Marcia. South Africa's High Commissioner Rhys Sheikh spoke to media here in Ottawa yesterday. He said it's not his place to tell other countries like Canada what to do, but he made it clear where his country stands.
And the claim of victimization of genocide is not a right to perpetuate that against another people.
He told reporters that Canada has three options here. Support this case, as countries from the Global South are doing, and that stance would be consistent, he said, with the position Canada took in a case with similar facts that Gambia brought against Myanmar. Or he acknowledged that Canada could oppose this case, as the U.S. has. But legal analysts told reporters yesterday that as a signatory to the Genocide Convention, there's a risk that if Canada were to provide material support or political cover for Israel, it could be complicit if this court eventually finds there's a risk of genocide in Gaza. Or there's a third option, similar to positions we've seen European allies like France take, which would be to uphold this legal process and commit Canada to respecting what the court decides. In a letter, NDP critic Heather McPherson told Foreign Minister Melanie Joly that if Canada isn't prepared to support South Africa's case, it should, at the very least, not oppose it.
But so far, Canada has not chosen any of those three options. What's going on?
Conservative Deputy Leader Melissa Lantsman this week took to her social media to accuse Joly of taking no position so that backbenchers in the Liberal caucus can play both sides. And indeed, we've seen in public statements MPs like Anthony Housefather and Marco Mendicino call the court application baseless and unconscionable. While MPs like Salma Zahid have said accusations that Israel's denying the necessities of life in Gaza deserve to be heard in a legal forum. If Liberals are looking to diaspora groups in this country for direction, there is no consensus there. CBC News was told there'd be some kind of declaration or statement clarifying where Canada stands yesterday. In the end, nothing came.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Closing arguments are expected to begin today in Donald Trump's civil fraud trial. The former president is being accused of misrepresenting his net worth by billions of dollars. Chris Reyes is at the courthouse for us this morning. And Chris, Trump wanted to address the court, but he's not allowed. Walk us through what happened.
So Trump had asked to deliver part of the closing arguments. Judge Arthur Engoron agreed, but with conditions, one of them being that Trump would not use it as an opportunity to give a campaign-style speech. Trump didn't agree to those limitations, and the judge rejected Trump's request as a result. And Marcia, another start and stop to today. Yesterday afternoon, it was announced that Trump's mother-in-law, Melania's mother, had died, and Trump's lawyers asked for a delay on the closing arguments. The judge also denied that request.
So what's expected to happen today?
Well, this is the home stretch of this trial that started back in November, and today lawyers on both sides will deliver their closing arguments. Written summary briefings were submitted last week, so we have a sense of what we'll hear in court today. From the Attorney General's team, we'll likely get a detailed rundown of why they believe Trump and his associates, which include his 2 adult sons, are guilty of what Letitia James has called staggering fraud in inflating the value of their many businesses. And they'll also talk about why they believe the Trump camp should be fined $370 million and also barred from doing business in New York. For Trump, she wants that ban for life. For his sons, 5 years. And then, Marcia, from Trump's team, we'll hear why this case has no merit. Now, we know that because that's been repeated throughout this trial by Donald Trump, by his sons, by all his lawyers. They'll say that Trump never overvalued his businesses, but rather undervalued it, and that's because the Trump brand is worth more than it was ever stated on paper. And then we'll likely hear one of their most repeated lines, which is that there's no fraud because the banks got paid.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
The CBC's Chris Reyes reporting from New York. The U.S. inflation data for December has just come out. It shows a 0.3% increase since November. CBC's senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong puts it into perspective.
This is a touch higher than we were expecting. Both the headline and the core numbers are up, and both really re-accelerated through December. But it's important to remember some kind of a stall or re-acceleration was expected. This is a very similar picture to what we've been seeing here in Canada. The rate of inflation came down so sharply over the course of 2023 in both Canada and the U.S. That deceleration, it was fast and really only came with a couple of wobbles on the way down. So this doesn't change the direction we expect price growth to be going in over the course of 2024. And even though it is a touch higher than expected, it doesn't shift our expectations by much at all. And lastly, I think it probably serves as a very good template for what we can expect to see here in Canada when the CPI numbers for this country come out next week. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
The Apostle Convention comes into force today. Some official documents in some provinces can now be authenticated in less time and at lower cost. As Stephen Hoff reports, it means those with family, business, or property overseas no longer need special certification.
There's many reasons why people in BC and across Canada would need public documents. So that's for moving, working, studying abroad, registering a marriage, birth or death.
Nikki Sharma is BC's Attorney General.
It's another step towards helping people work and come into BC, but also go the other way when they want to contribute internationally.
She says Canadians who need to certify documents for use abroad will now have a much easier time with the Apostle Convention. Some countries require a special certification to recognize documents, like birth certificates, marriage licenses, and school transcripts. Canadians had to go through a multi-step process involving a notary, Global Affairs Canada, and embassies. It took more than a month. Now Canada is joining 125 other countries and implementing an international agreement called the Apostle Convention. Once a document is apostilled, it will be accepted in those countries without further certification. The change means residents of Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and Quebec can certify documents through provincial governments. Todd McCarthy is the minister responsible for the service in Ontario. He says the difference will be significant.
It's going to be faster, simpler, and less expensive to do it with the 15-day turnaround.
Everyone else will have to go through Global Affairs Canada, but the process is expected to be faster for everybody. Stephen Hoff, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, we're getting a lot of calls from you out there during this winter storm that has moved from Alberta through Manitoba and has dumped a lot of snow on us this morning. Many highways closed. Good morning. I am Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM. We're on the app on your morning show. We'll get into those highway closures in a moment. The top line is that the perimeter is closed. That closed about 10:30 last night, I think was the time. It remains closed right now as the storm continues to move through. We'll also do our last full list of the school division closures in a moment. This half hour, in addition to covering the storm, a former member of Winnipeg's South Sudanese community says that she felt physically ill after hearing that a 19-year-old black man was shot and killed by Winnipeg police on New Year's Eve. She's drawing parallels to a South Sudanese man who was shot and killed by Winnipeg police 5 years ago. And she was involved in mobilizing the community at that time. We'll hear from her coming up. Right now to Heather Wells with a news update and headlines.
Good morning. Well, hospital beds are not enough. That is what an ER doctor in Winnipeg says after the NDP government announced the addition of 36 acute care beds to St. Boniface Hospital. Doug Ailefson works at the ER at Grace Hospital and hopes the province is up to the challenge of staffing those beds. Want to forget winter altogether? Stop and smell the scent of floral gardens from around the world? You can do it right here in Winnipeg. Fleur de Ville Voyage has opened in the Leaf at Assiniboine Park, and these aren't just any old flowers. They're 15 mannequins covered in flowers and natural plant material, inspired by travel destinations. We'll tell you all about it in our next local news at 8:30.
That was the name of the failed exhibit that didn't make it. Any old flowers?
As soon as I said it, I thought maybe that's not the right way to describe this.
I think it's a perfect juxtaposition because this is some of the most beautiful floral work I've seen ever. There's a bit of a video online. It's lovely.
It's amazing. And you know what? They switch out the flowers so they're always fresh.
Yeah, which
so
is
what you see is going to be beautiful.
Because people were wondering, right? It's there for a few weeks. We all know what our bouquets look like after a couple of weeks in the dining room table, right?
Yeah. I just leave mine there.
Do you? Oh, I used to work at a florist, so I cut and recut and remake bouquets and put them all over my house. I always have fresh flowers in my house.
It makes the house look so great. Yeah, I love
right now I've got lilies. Tulips. It's a good time of year for tulips.
Tulips are my favorite.
I'm smiling because behind the glass, I just need to tell radio audience why I laughed why I was smiling at Lilies. Brad Lilies is in this morning. He's working with Travis Peterson on our YouTube channel. As soon as I said I love lilies, Brad went, yeah! School closures list because of the storm here. We have quite a number of divisions that have called it. It's the last time I'll read it out in its entirety. You probably know by now at 12 minutes past 8. But here is what's closed. Lord Selkirk School Division is closed and entirely. So is Borderland, Seine River, Prairie Rose, Evergreen, Garden Valley, Sunrise, and Interlake. Also affected, Hanover is closed, staff to work from home though. Red River closed, staff to work from home though. In addition here, Schools in Beautiful Plains Division are open, but buses aren't running. Gretna, all classes from 9 to 12 are closed. Rolling River buses are canceled, and Colony schools are closed today in Rolling River. In the Western School Division, classes and buses are canceled, but staff again to report if it's safe. And Prairie Spirit's partially closed as well. School is closed in the Manitou area for Prairie Spirit, and no buses are running, so that's why it's partial. And that's it, everybody. So have a good jammy day. Let's get to Abby Adeyemi with the actual details on how much snow is coming.
Good morning once again. Now, as you step out this morning, brace yourself for a chilly morning. Current temperature sits at minus 16 degrees with this period of snow we're experiencing, and it will continue all through the day. So far, Winnipeg has seen 14.6 centimeters. Now, the northwest winds remains brisk at 40, gusting to 60, and the temperatures will be falling to minus 19 this afternoon. Though with the wind chill, it will be feeling like minus 25 5 this morning as you step out. And we also have a weather statement for Winnipeg, southern Manitoba, and parts of the Red River Valley. They're under this special weather statement as the Alberta Clipper piles more snow on what has already fallen. So far, like I mentioned earlier, we have about 14 centimeters already in Winnipeg, and we're expecting to see about 15 in over 36 hours of what we are forecasting. In western Manitoba, we have a snowfall warning over there, and the snow, we hear that it's going to be heavy at times, and it's expected to continue all through till midday. Now, as this heavy snow continues over that region, that's talking about the Riding Mountain Park area and Lake Winnipegot, says it's going to be tapering off around midday, and we should be seeing about 10 to 20 centimeters by the time the system moves off this afternoon. And if we go up north, we hear that part of the north actually under extreme cold warning. Now, when you factor in the wind chill value around in Lynn Lake and Leaf Rapids, it's going to be feeling like minus 45 to 50 this morning. So there's some wind chill there. You should take care of yourself up there.
Yeah, cold's the story north, if snow's the story south for sure.
And Winnipeg is currently at minus 16 degrees.
Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, what's closed in the highway situation?
Yeah, just recently, Highway 3 and Highway 14 that runs from Crystal City all the way to Highway 75 has been closed due to poor conditions. As well, the perimeter still remains closed right now in its entirety. As well, Highway 16 from Highway 50 near Woodside all the way to Nipawa at Highway 5 also closed both ways right now. Here in the city, there are a few things to keep an eye out for out there, particularly at northbound St. Anne's just past Fermor. There's a stalled truck blocking that northbound curb lane. Keep left to get around that. That's right outside the Superstore. As well, westbound Goulet at Desmarais, there's a stall blocking the westbound curb lane. So when you're heading westbound, keep right to get around that. Got a call from Dan on a Bike with a reminder as well that a lot of cyclists are still out there today, but you're more likely to see them on the streets and the bike lanes just because they're not quite plowed yet. So just be careful if you are seeing cyclists out there because the roads for them are easier to bike on. So just be patient around those cyclists who are trying to get where they need to go. If you see anything else going on out there on the highways, bike lanes, roads, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, as we've been hearing in the news, the investigation into the New Year's Eve shooting of an international student has been handed over now to an Alberta agency. The IIU, or Independent Investigation Unit, says the case involving the death of 19-year-old Afolabi Stephen Opaso should be given to an outside agency because the officer involved in the shooting is a close relative of a Manitoba Justice employee. It wants the case sent elsewhere to avoid any perceived conflict of interest. On December 31st, police performed a well-being check on Opaso, an international student from Nigeria. Police say he was armed with 2 knives when they arrived at a University Crescent apartment. There were 2 others inside the suite, and the IIU said in a statement that the officers were confronted by Opaso and he was shot. His family's lawyer says he was experiencing a mental health episode that day. Former Winnipegger Sandy Dang says news of his death made her, quote, physically sick. Dang moved to Winnipeg in 2000 and was an active member of the city's South Sudanese community. She's also a social worker. She now lives in Vancouver with her 2 sons, aged 17 and 21. I spoke with her earlier this week.
Good morning.
Sandy, how did you hear about the news and what happened here in Winnipeg?
I'm still connected to Winnipeg. I still have a Manitoba number, as you can see. I have a lot of family and friends in Winnipeg, and because I lived in Winnipeg more than I lived in my country of origin. So yeah, I heard on the news, and then casually I was talking to my adult son about it, and it turned out that he knew all about it, and so it just it broke my heart. I was really devastated, and as a mother of young 2 Black boys who were born and raised in Winnipeg, this hits home to me. As an African, I come from a collectivist culture. Like, all our children are raised by aunties and uncles. They don't have to be necessarily from the same cultural background. As long as we're from the same cultural African origins, we consider ourselves relatives. And yeah, it just hit me hard because he was a child, like 19. He just had the whole life ahead of him, and for his life to be cut short like that is just very traumatizing. And It brought back a lot of memories too, because I was in Winnipeg when Machar Madut was shot
killed
by Winnipeg police. Brought all these feelings back. Not again.
And I'll ask you more about that. I'm interjecting, but in a moment about that.
No problem.
I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned that you had a conversation with your son about this. He had heard the news already. What was that like? And what subsequent conversations have you had then with your boys?
Well, the conversation was like, oh my goodness, like Winnipeg police did it again. They killed another black man. What's going on? And it's another person who was in a mental crisis too as well. So, of course, as a mother, I'm trying my best not to share my anger, but at the same time, I have to console him, because for him too, it was a shock, and it's something that actually is very traumatizing, because it's still a lot of his high school friends are still in Winnipeg, and that's the age group. He's 21. El Paso was 19, so he heard of him from his friends who were in Winnipeg, and of course everybody's in distress and everybody's just scared, and it's like, who's next? Like, I don't want to hear this in the news. I don't want to be able to hear, like, next time they shot some kid that I know. And we always have conversations, even when we were in Winnipeg. I'm always concerned if he's out like driving, especially at night in the evening. I'll show him what he needs to do. If he get pulled over, give them the papers. Please do not try to talk back. Do not. Like, I literally tell him these things, how to behave, because he's a black man and things can go wrong in a second. And then I don't want to get that call that something happened and the police did something to him, So those are legit concerns that we talk about to our children, And I know I'm not the only one, because I have a lot of other black moms that we talk, and we have these things in common. We talk to our boys about these things, because these are real concerns.
Where do you see gaps in support for international students or mental health supports for people who are in our black community or racialized communities, rather?
First of all, access for black folks to go into to get the supports, it's very minimal. First of all, there's a stigma about mental health. And there are a lot of men in our community, and I can speak on behalf of most African communities. Nobody wants to admit that they're mentally ill. Nobody wants to admit that they really need the support, because they'll be viewed as being weak. Like, this is the land of all these opportunities for you. Like, why are you going to be depressed? Why are you going to be sad? Why are you sitting and laying down, not doing much? So there's a lot of stigma around that. And plus, there's not a lot of services that can be utilized too, because even the health systems, there's a lot of systemic barriers that are put in place. Being a newcomer, and especially as an international student,
so many barriers, as you're saying.
So many barriers, including affordability, and sometimes the money is not there and supports are not there.
I want to return to something you said earlier. You said, "Oh no, not again," I think is what you said.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit, for listeners that don't know what your involvement was here in Winnipeg before, when this happened, this for you say was triggering when this death happened. Can you explain why and how you were involved in the previous case of Manitoba Madut?
It was triggering because I knew Machar Madut personally. He was a member of the South Sudanese community. I know him. I know his family. And when I was in Winnipeg, I actually, as a reaction to his killing, I was one of those people. I couldn't sleep the night before, and I felt physically sick. So I went to the community center, and I called my friends, and I called the community leaders, and I told them, we need to do something. This is not okay. Because we knew that Machar was living with mental health issues, and he wasn't somebody that bothered anybody in the community when he came to the South Sudanese Community Center and participated in things, right? So for him to be killed like that, it was something that I couldn't take. And then we had the rally that we had against the police for, because we were demanding accountability and all that stuff. But it wasn't an easy process, to organize, because a lot of people were scared. They didn't know, because we come from communities where police brutality is a thing, and people are scared of the police. So now when we come to Canada and the same things are happening, they can't even speak up, and I find a lot of the men in the community were scared the most. We were demanding accountability and transparency, and obviously that never happened, because it's been always the story that is always justifiable, the use of force. but there's so many ways to de-escalate situations.
Just to fill in some details for the listeners here, the rally that you were one of the organizers behind for Mansour Madood, who, as you said, you knew, he was a South Sudanese man. He was shot and killed by Winnipeg police in 2019. He'd come to Canada after fleeing Sudan and Kenya. He was a refugee, and yes, he lived, as you're saying, with mental illness. So lots of parallels.
What makes it worse too is Apostle was a young person. He was only 19, full of life. In our African community, people don't mourn somebody who's an adult who had children already, but when it's a young person who still didn't have those opportunities of being a father and having his family, the grief is even more, it's harder on the whole community, not just on the parents. So my heart goes out to the family of Opaso for the loss of their son. And this is not the Canada that we want to portray for a lot of people who don't live here, because they think they're sending their son here for a better life, to get an education, And if he likes it, he might have stayed. But look at what happened. Not every parent is going to be here. Not every parent who's an immigrant has the language skills to be able to stand up and say, no, this is not fair how my child was treated. But, why do I have to be always worried about my children being out in the street? It's not fair.
If you could talk to Police Chief Danny Smythe right now, what would you say?
Stop defending your members, because you cannot be 100% sure if somebody's a racist or somebody's a bigot. There's a study that was done by a group. It's called the Tracking Injustice Tracker Project. It was done by the Canadian Civil Liberties Association with some universities, including Carleton, Queen's, U of T, School of Social Work. And they were talking about how these instances where fatal encounters with the police are on the rise since 2000. Yet Danny Smythe went in, and he last week when he had there was an incident that happened in St. Boniface, and he's trying to minimize it and saying that lethal force is not used, but that's not okay. We're not being transparent when we say things like that. We need to be honest. We need to tell the public what's happening, and as leaders, you need to acknowledge the wrongdoing of the police members, because he's not out and about. He cannot be 100% sure of their behaviors, their attitudes, and how they treat Black men, Indigenous folks, and other marginalized groups. You cannot. There's no way you can sit here and say, my members did what they could for this and that. But people died. And Opaso is not the first Black man that was killed by Winnipeg police.
What's the
I can go back and show you how many Black men since 2005 that were killed by Winnipeg police.
In your opinion, and this is can trust with Danny Smythe and this police force be rebuilt? When you think about the last, it's 2023, so the last 5 years, and even just in the short-term history of what's happened in the city?
If people are honest about change, and when I talk about change, we're talking about the structural changes, systemic changes to these structures that they've been here for a long time. When these colonial structures were built, I'm talking about the police, the justice, schools, institutions such as universities, they were not built for people that look like us, that look like Opaso. They were built for Eurocentric ideals, so they don't apply necessarily to other people who come from different cultural backgrounds. It's time that we have radical changes in our systems in Canada. Instead of talking all the time and doing this, do I have faith? No, I don't. Because when somebody like Danny Smythe comes in and somewhat gaslighting the things that happen there's a young Black man that was killed, and then there's on November 2, there's another Black man that was killed, Dustin Hatcher, as well. And then you want to come here and you want to tell me that the lethal force is not used often. You're trying to minimize it. You're trying to damage control so that you can have a good face. No, I don't have hope in the police department. Not in Winnipeg police anyways.
You moved to BC in 2021. What prompted your move, and has your sense of safety changed there?
One of the things that I did when I was moving out of Winnipeg, I wanted to see where I can take my children and not feel very scared all the time. Because after 2019, when I was in Winnipeg and that incident that happened, because it was the second incident that happened in our Sudanese community when Winnipeg police killed a South Sudanese person, I was actually thinking, my children wanted to go out west, out east to Toronto, and I told them we're not going to Toronto because it's like leaving Winnipeg police and going to Toronto police where they're targeting, black men, not necessarily like in the very, but in my mind, this is how I was thinking. And I said, no, you're most likely going to get in trouble if you go out there, even if you're just walking down the street and you're not doing anything. So I was scared. So I said, you know what, we're going to go to the West Coast. We still have issues here in BC, but at least we're not, like, being black in BC is not, like, I find it a little bit lesser and evil than being black in Toronto or in Winnipeg.
Sandy Dang is a social worker. She lives in Vancouver with her 2 sons now. She was talking about the death of 19-year-old Afolabi Stephen Opasa, who was shot by police on New Year's Eve. The IIU says the investigation, this is a development, the investigation into the shooting has been handed to an Alberta agency in order to avoid any potential conflict of interest, as the officer involved in the shooting is a close relative of a Manitoba Justice employee. You can read more at cbc.ca/Manitoba, and your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we've got a little bit of blowing snow, some light snow. It's minus 16 right now in Winnipeg. Temperature falling to minus 19. We're under a special weather statement. We've got more snow on the way. Well, Manitobans are digging out of a snowstorm that won't let up until later today. That Alberta Clipper has stalled over the province. Scott Kaler at WeatherLogic says the Riding Mountain area has already had more than 20 centimeters and can expect closer to 30 once this system moves out later today. Kaler says Winnipeg could see as much as 20 centimeters once this is all done.
So the bulk of the snow has already fallen. Winnipeg has received 14.6 centimeters up till 6 a.m. with approximately another 5 on the way today. And so as we go through the day, it will slowly end, but temperatures are going to fall.
Once you finish shoveling, get set to shiver. Kaler says temperatures will fall into the minus 20s with strong wind chills starting tomorrow. More highways are closing in southern Manitoba as that snow comes down. Highway 3 now is closed from the junction near Morden to south of Crystal City. Highway 14 is closed from 75 to the junction at Highway 3. Highway 16 is still closed from Neepwa to Highway 50, and the perimeter around Winnipeg is also still closed. No plows are out on the highways and in the city of Winnipeg. A First Nations woman from Manitoba who spent more than 30 years with RCMP is cautiously optimistic about its race-based data collection project. That project aims to help the force better understand the experiences of people from racialized communities. Marge Hudson is from Barons River First Nation. While in the RCMP, she says she faced racism and harassment.
This may help, but they're going to have to go through some special training and have Native people in the academy teaching them.
The project launched this week in select communities across Canada, including in Thompson. The Mounties say the data will be collected for 1 year before it's analyzed and the findings are publicly reported. Hospital beds are not enough, according to an emergency room doctor in Winnipeg. Doug Alefson is a former Liberal politician, also works at the ER in Grace Hospital. He was happy to hear the NDP government announce plans to add 36 acute care beds to St. Boniface Hospital, but he hopes they are up to the challenge of staffing those beds.
When people say beds, we mean staffed beds. Without staff, particularly nursing staff and support staff, a bed is just a piece of furniture. You can't put a patient in it unless there's someone to look after them in it. So we need to find the staff.
Health Minister Uzoma Asaguera says the beds at St. B will open in a sustainable manner, and the hope is to have all 36 operational and staffed within a year. Firefighters in Winnipeg will soon have a new member with a nose for arson. A specially trained dog, a Labrador Retriever, is being prepped for that assignment in Virginia. Jason Federow is Winnipeg's Chief Officer of Fire Investigations. He says the city has seen a spike in suspicious fires.
The dog will be able to help our investigators by assisting them in finding areas where they'll be able to collect samples of where possible ignitable liquids were used to accelerate the fire. And we can take those samples, send them off to our lab, and have a forensic chemist be able to analyze that.
Federer says that the city has a deal with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The Bureau will train the dog and a Winnipeg firefighter who will become its designated handler. Federer says they may get called to help with some arson investigations in the northern U.S. Well, we may be covered in a dump of snow, but the scent of floral gardens from around the world can now be experienced right here in Winnipeg. Fleur de Ville Voyage has opened at the Leaf in Assiniboine Park. It features 15 mannequins covered in flowers and natural plant material, all inspired by travel destinations. Tina Barkley is co-founder of the Vancouver-based floral luxury brand.
We bring flowers to the people. We spread joy through flowers, and what we try to do is celebrate local floral talents. So what's really special about the show is that each installation is designed by a local floral artist, so a different florist for each thing that you see here today.
And you can see and smell Fleur de Ville Voyage at The Leaf until January 21st. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Last quick look at the weather. Abby?
Right now, Winnipeg is at -16, blowing snow in out layers. And of course, as we get through the day, the forecast remains consistent and we'll be seeing a temperature rise to -19 this afternoon. Brandon and Dauphin is at -23. Thompson, your high is at 24. Churchill, ice crystals, and -18.
If you look out the window, if you Google Manitoba storm, this is exactly what it looks like. The wind's really picked up.
I think this is what Manitoba looks like in the popular imagination of the world,
Yes,
I think.
They think we're like this every day, which we're not. But today we are. So, Corey, last just reminder.
Yeah, perimeter's still closed. Highway 16 still closed from Highway 50 to Nipawa, as well as Highway 3 and 14, pretty much right from Crystal City all the way to Highway 75 still closed. Look out for a collision southbound Route 90 just north of Cordon that's causing traffic to back up really slow on Chief Pegwis going westbound.
Jerry Stern wrote into the show. This is fun, Corey. He just sharing something that was going around a couple of years ago, but an oldie but a goodie. And it basically is a parody of a tune, Here Comes the Sun. So it's Here Comes the Snow, Winnipeggers. And then it goes on and it says, just slow down. Yeah. It's good advice and it made me smile. Thanks for sharing, Jerry. And thanks to all the listeners who shared photos of the snow for our YouTube feed this morning on our CBC Manitoba channel. Big thanks to our live team this morning, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, as well as Travis Peterson in YouTube, behind the YouTube controls. And Heather Wells in our news department, also with Megan Ketchison there and Aaron Broman. Thanks to our wider team at CBC in our current affairs unit, our hardworking team of APs, and our leaders Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Take care and be well, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. And The Current is coming up next on CBC.
I find a lot of times schools and school communities, you ask them, do you have an allergy policy? And they're like, yeah, we don't allow peanuts in our school. And then that's the end of it.
The days of taking peanut butter and jelly to school for lunch are long gone. Fears of severe allergic reactions have led to nut bans across this country. In just a moment.